therefore a quorum is present and the meeting is qualified to consider the agenda items. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to remind everyone wishing to address the board to sign up with our clerk, Cindy Hutchings, at the end of the table on my right. As a reminder, there is a 5-minute limit to those comments. Upon approval of the consent agenda, no additional speaker requests will be accepted. Before I consider a motion to adopt the agenda, Dr. Gist, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
There are no changes to tonight's agenda, Madam President.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
I'll call for the vote. Ms. Fate?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I want to recognize everyone. I love to see a full house. I see all kinds of people here, and appreciate all of you being here to do the good work of the school district with us. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Gist for her special presentations for tonight.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, we do have a special presentation tonight that I am really looking forward to hearing. As everyone in this room, I am confident, well knows, on May 31st and June 1st of 1921, a terrible incident happened right here in our town, Tulsa, resulting in the loss of precious life and destruction and devastation of the Greenwood district of Tulsa. Sadly, for too long, Tulsa has not given the attention that needs to be given to this topic, to this attack, this massacre that occurred right here in our city. And many Tulsans have grown up not knowing about the incident. And many of you have heard me actually tell my personal story of, as a lifelong Tulsan and someone who attended Tulsa Public Schools, and I'm a proud product of Tulsa Public Schools. It was when I was well into my adult years living in Florida when someone I met brought the Greenwood attack to my attention, and I will never forget how I felt. I felt shocked that I didn't know. I felt embarrassed and ashamed that I didn't know. I felt so sad about the city I love being a part of such a horrific incident. And so as superintendent, really believe so incredibly strongly that the teaching of this topic is absolutely must be something that we take care of right here in Tulsa, but it's not just Tulsa history. It is not just even Oklahoma history. It is U.S. history, and I've had those conversations with folks nationally that we really need. We have a chance here to be a model to show what it means to uncover aspects of U.S. history that we do not give enough attention to, and that we really must make sure that we are telling these stories. So the great news is that with the leadership of many Tulsans, including Senator Kevin Matthews and many others, Jamal and so many people, we have the Tulsa Race Riot Commission, and they're doing work to prepare the commemoration of the 100th year date that's coming up upon us just here shortly. And so in that effort, and I sit on the commission, and we have folks who've worked in support of some educational aspects that have grown out of that commission. And all of this has culminated, at least as a launching point, in a 4-day institute that we hosted in Tulsa Public Schools last week. I'm remiss to say that much of my personal education about what happened in Tulsa in 1921 has been because of the work of Hannibal Johnson, so I'm very grateful for his leadership, and Dr. Carlos Hill, who played a huge role in the Institute. And then I also want to acknowledge our Deputy Chief of Academics, Danielle Neves, who her leadership and her work and the work of her team was so important in getting that together. And tonight we have with us our Rogers College Junior High 8th grade teacher, Joe Nelson. And so we're grateful for Joe and his work there with Principal Dennis at Rogers. We also have Academy Central 3rd grade teacher, Crystal Patrick, who works there at Academy Central with Principal Taylor. So we're going to hear from Danielle Neves and it looks like others, and I'm really looking forward to, I was able to be a part of the kickoff, but I want to hear along with everyone here tonight about how the rest of the week went. So I'll turn it over to Danielle Neves. Danielle.
Thank you, President Schreiber, Dr. Gist, members of the board. Really glad to be here to tell you about the Institute last week. And we'll actually kick it off by letting you see who was there. We had 44 teachers attend the Institute. And while many more applied, we actually had 81 teachers express interest in attending the Institute. We wanted to keep the number smaller so that the teachers could really engage in some deep discussions about not only this piece of our local history, but also grappling with sort of how they are understanding how race and how violence has occurred in our city and in our world, and then how they take that into their classrooms as teachers and are working to really build our students, not their knowledge of the event, as well as their critical ability to be conscious of the event, reflect on the event, and then also become better citizens. So the Institute was a while in coming, but very specifically in this year, the commission was formed in February of 2017, and as an sort of an offshoot, a committee of that was working on what to do in terms of education, and really thought about the power that would come from an institute where teachers would learn about the tragedy, learn about Black Wall Street prior to the tragedy, and then also learn about the efforts that are happening around reconciliation and healing. And so in the Institute, the biggest goal is that teachers will actually develop lessons that they will use in their classrooms and that can be shared across the system and across the city for other teachers who are endeavoring to do much the same. We had teachers from all grade levels, all across the city, all different backgrounds. When the Institute was first being formulated, we anticipated that mostly we would have high school teachers, a few middle school or junior high teachers, and we're thrilled to find the interest from our elementary teachers as well, because it really rounded out not only the conversation, but in connection to what Dr. Gish said, how do we begin to develop an understanding of our local history from our youngest students throughout in ways that are appropriate for both their age and the content that they're learning. Over the 4 days, the teachers went through a real variety of activities aimed at deepening their understanding of race, of Black Wall Street, of the particular incident, and then taking a reflective inquiry stance in terms of developing lesson plans. And the workshops were led by, as Dr. Giss said, Dr. Carlos Hill from the University of Oklahoma, Hannibal Johnson, Facing History and Ourselves, who are a national nonprofit whose work is all about equipping educators and community members to really begin to engage in conversations about their difficult history across the world in different parts of the world. And then our teachers, the picture you saw at the beginning, they got to go out actually to Reconciliation Park and the Greenwood Cultural Center and engage with leaders in that time to talk about how do we portray the story of what happened in a way that moves us forward towards racial healing in our city. Want to give you a little bit of a glimpse into what we heard from our participants, and we'll hear from the teachers in just a moment. When we asked what went well, they really enjoyed the fact that there was a wide diversity of folks in the room who they could engage with. They really enjoyed the wealth of knowledge from our speakers, and just knowing that we were getting into conversations that were coming out of what was at their core most important for them to grapple with. One of those being the discussion of the word riot versus a discussion of massacre as it relates to these events. And one of our teachers said this was the best professional learning offered by TPS ever. When asked how they'll share what they've learned, teachers were ready to get out with their colleagues, their families, their friends immediately, talking about making lunch plans with folks for the following week. And as you know, teachers are off contract right now. Talking to their neighbors and their families, talking to their children. Posts on Facebook talking about the conversations they'd engaged in about riot and massacre. This is really powerful in terms of the reflections the teachers were having immediately as a part of the Institute. And when they think about their takeaways, we'll see that so many teachers talked about how this is an absolute obligation for us as a district to engage in this work and to think about not only how do we understand and tell the story of this moment in our city and the repercussions that have come from it, but also how do we give our students strategies to begin to do that themselves. I'm going to turn it over to our teachers, and we'll hear first from Joe Nelson, 8th grade English Language Arts teacher at Rogers Junior High.
Before Mr. Nelson starts, I just want everybody to know that we are working on finding some more chairs. So just hang tight. We want everybody to stay and feel welcome, and that means they need a seat. Go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
Good evening. I just want to say thank you to the board, to Dr. Gist, and to everybody who was involved. The easy thing to do would be to take a book or to take a curriculum and to take this information and facts into the classroom, give it to students, have them write something about it, have them take a test, and move on. The right thing to do is to have a dialogue. We really every day want our students to be vulnerable in the classroom and to take those academic risks and to put themselves in the line and ask the hard questions. But as teachers, we don't often like to do that because we're kind of know-it-alls. That's why we're teachers. And one of the things I really appreciated about this experience was that we got to do just that. We got to be vulnerable. We got to ask uncomfortable questions. We got to ask hard questions. And as one of the participants pointed out, there may be no answer at the end. And I think it was important for us to experience that because when we go in the classroom, we need to understand what our students are going to take from this. Really quickly, one of the last things on the last day as we were going over lesson plans, there was a teacher there and she wanted to have a conversation about language. Is this a riot or is this a massacre? She didn't want to tell them what the answer was. She wanted the students to decide. These are things adults haven't even decided. And we're asking 7th graders, we're asking 8th graders, we're asking 3rd graders to have these conversations. And I can't think of a better way to show them that they have value and that they are wrestling with the things that adults wrestle with than to ask them those same questions that we asked ourselves. Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, I'm completely nervous, so let's just get that out of the way. I'm going to lock in on a friendly face, Ms. Shelton. I'm just going to look at you while I read what I've prepared. Okay, my name is Crystal Patrick, and I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Academy Central Elementary School. I am also a product of Tulsa Public Schools. It wasn't until I enrolled in Oklahoma history at OU, however, that I was taught about the 1921 race massacre. The Summer Institute was a life-changing event for me, and I've since identified 3 desired outcomes. Number 1, I benefited from learning about the historical context and social conditions that led to the riot. I also learned about the spirit of entrepreneurship, the business acumen, and how the Black community built itself from nothing to what has become known as Black Wall Street. Number 2, my students will benefit from learning about the importance of being civically engaged in policy on the local and state levels. They also have a shining example of the resilience of the human spirit. By rebuilding the Greenwood District, the families overcame the worst of circumstances with self-determination, self-will, and a love for their community. Number 3, TPS will benefit from including this history in its curriculum because it grants us the opportunity to put in practice our theories of access and equity. The following quotation by Hannibal Johnson sums up my hope for Tulsa's future. The lessons of this fragment of American history are legion. Few are more compelling and relevant than the realization that the human experience may bend, but it need not break. I personally would like to thank TPS and Dr. Gist for having the courage to tell this story because Greenwood is all of us. Thank you.
In closing, just a few notes. Our next steps are really to actually dive into the lesson plans, to actually engage with the teachers who participated, and then also to talk with them throughout the year as they implement those lessons and learn from how those things go in their classroom. And then we're really looking to make the Institute not only an annual event, but also something where more and more teachers can engage each year. And then we have this comment from a participant, and at the very bottom it says, "For me, the message on the statues of the John Hope Franklin Reconciliation Park has emerged as the theme of these 4 days of the Institute: hostility, humiliation, and hope." We'd like to thank our community partners who made this possible, and thank the board and Dr. Gist for your continued support as we engage in this really challenging work, but also empowering our students and our teachers to be the leaders of Tulsa in this area. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us a glimpse into the Institute last week, and I want to just say again how excited I am. This is just a next step on this work. We have every intention of including additional teachers and growing this far beyond the number of teachers we served this year. I also want to again acknowledge and thank Senator Matthews, who came in, I believe, after we did that the first time, so he is here with us tonight, and we also have Representative Monroe Nichols, who's here with us tonight, another state elected official. So very grateful for them. And then lastly, I'll just say, of all the inspiring things about the Institute, I think the emphasis on both the beauty and the prosperity of Greenwood and Black Wall Street prior to the destruction that occurred in 1921, and making sure that our students understand that and the power that's in that part of the story, as well as an emphasis on the Renaissance that continues to happen today, that hope part that Danielle has talked about is an important part of the story. Not at all to minimize the horror of what occurred, because we have to face that truth, but there is a lot more to the story as well. So with that, Madam President, I will turn the agenda back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gist. From there, we'll move to the approval of the minutes of June 4th, 2018, regular meeting of the board. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I'll call for the vote. Ms. Fate?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving to the consent agenda. That brings us to the a necessary motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Before I call for the vote, are there any comments? I'll call for the vote then. Ms. Fate?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye, but
Aye.
due to my, one second, guys. Due to my employment with CAP Tulsa, I do abstain on 4 items tonight: E64, E77, E184, and E222.
Mr. Percival?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll move to the action agenda from there. We have a number of items this evening. We're going to start with F1, to rename the current Shoto Elementary School, whose name was rescinded on April 2nd, to Wayman Tisdale Fine Arts Academy, effective July 1, 2018. I'm going to go ahead and read the rationale. In accordance with Policy 8102, an ad hoc committee, including Shoto Elementary teachers, staff, parents, and students and alumni, met several times between April 2018 and May 2018. The ad hoc committee gathered suggestions and feedback from members of the school community and representatives from the Osage Nation, and also held a facilitated discussion to explore the relationship between the name of the building and the school community identity, establish criteria for the name, and determine methods for decision-making. The committee ultimately unanimously voted on several name options that were shared with the school community to gauge the favorability of each. Accounting for that community feedback and considering criteria such as alignment with district core values, experience in fine arts, and modeling positive charter traits for students, the ad hoc committee nominates the new school name of Wayman Tisdale Fine Arts Academy. I have several speakers on the different school names this evening, so first I'd like to call up Ms. Regina Tisdale to speak to this item. If she wants to.
Hi. I usually don't want to speak, but I felt like this was something that I needed to respond to. When I initially got the call with the probability of the name change, I don't know if you remember, Dr. Guest, but I remember saying, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" And so as a family, we are overjoyed. We are so excited, and we are thankful. And when I think about Wayman's legacy and all that he accomplished, for me, and my children, I would say, and I'd imagine him too, this is like one of the top honors because we are products of North Tulsa schools. And so for someone to consider him or our family's name to be on the school, it means a ton. So I just want to say thank you guys so much.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve item F1.
Move approval.
Second.
A discussion on the item? Everybody's microphone is lit up. Does anybody want to speak to it? Ready to vote. Just ready to vote. Okay, great. Well, I personally am very honored to have the opportunity to vote for naming one of our schools after a local person that died too young, but we get to know the history of and keep alive. I think that's really meaningful and an inspiration for all of our kids. So thank you so much for being a part of it with us tonight. I'll call for the vote. Ms. Shelton?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. We'll move there. We're going to move on to the recommendation F2, rename the current Columbus Elementary School, whose name was rescinded on the April 2nd, 2018 agenda, to Dolores Huerta Elementary School, effective July 1st, 2018. And I will read the rationale for this as well. In accordance with Policy 8102, an ad hoc committee, including Columbus Elementary teachers, staff, parents, student, alumni, met 5 times between March 2018 and May 2018. The ad hoc committee surveyed members of the school community to develop an initial list of potential names and facilitated a second survey to gauge favorability of potential names. The ad hoc committee considered that community input as well as the namesake's alignment with district core values, contributions to the communities the school serves, and modeling of courageous leadership and commitment to building a better world for all families. Based on those considerations, the ad hoc committee nominates the new school name of Dolores Huerta Elementary School. We have several speakers on this item as well, and we'll begin with Mr. Tom Moody.
Thank the board for giving us the opportunity to express our displeasure with naming the school the name that has been chosen. The 4 names that were listed on the 31st of May that we knew about was the first chance that we had to even know the names and what had been chosen as the new name of the school. Since the July 1st meeting, we have had a meeting, a quarterly meeting of our neighborhood. We have taken a vote, and Valley Glen Elementary is the choice of our neighborhood for the school. We have, in a very short time, put together a petition, and we have several people that have signed that petition. We have learned there's more negative about this person than was brought out. And I think that whoever did the research on it probably knows that. And we have some people that we feel that would stand the test of anyone, and that's Betty Boyd, Sue Tibbs, and both these women were very upstanding ladies, served our community and the city and state very well for many years. And both those ladies lived in our neighborhood for, I know, 40 years or maybe longer. And so there's other names. If we had had the opportunity to look at those and express our opinions on it, I think we would have a different outcome. And so that's what we want to express tonight. Our neighborhood is totally unhappy with the selection of this person as the name of our school. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mr. Ed Garcia.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. On behalf of him, as well as the Neighborhood Association, we did have a neighborhood meeting, and we had a vote, and everybody was on the same line that we were, that it would need to be a neutral name, and we'd like it to be a neutral name, so that in the case of any negative stuff that would come up underneath the name that you're going to name the school, that it could be easily neutralized by naming it underneath a neutral name of Valley Glen Elementary School, of which the area that it sits in. I have a petition that we took around the neighborhood and got quite a bit of a response about it, and everybody that we talked to that we'd mentioned that it needed to be named or mentioned that we wanted to name it after the neighborhood said that, well, that makes all the sense in the world, that it should be named after the neighborhood instead of a name that could be some way, shape, or form controversial in the future. And they did not have any problem with having some name of some person put underneath Valley Glen Elementary School, so that just in case something came up that was controversial, it could be removed. And that's kind of where the whole neighborhood sits on it. And we do have a petition with at least 100 signatures on a short notice type situation that is signed. And that's kind of our position. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Ms. Sabrina Wilbur.
Thank you to the board for allowing me this opportunity. I've just completed my second year at Columbus Elementary, and I taught my students the true crimes of Columbus and then inhumane treatment to Native Americans. My students were disheartened as they learned of these evil actions and that he is actually celebrated within our building. The name change is essential to share with our students that we as a staff are going to provide them a space to celebrate a woman such as Dolores Huerta. She has done many things in her life that our students can look up to as being a strong advocate and not accepting the bare minimum. Our school is very diverse in race, socioeconomics, and family makeup. With renaming, we are provided the opportunity to help students feel more supported and embrace their cultural background. This name is not only going to celebrate students of Hispanic heritage, but it shows students that in 2018, we are going to bring representation to not only a woman, but a woman of color. I teach my students to be leaders and overcome challenges, even those that may upset others. I am incredibly blessed to come into this career and excited as organized groups of women are fighting for their rights and people are advocating not only for themselves, but they see injustice happening before their eyes and they fight for those. The name Dolores Huerta Elementary embodies the goals and skills I set forth in my students as she saw the crime and took action. We as a staff of the school are putting effort into the noticed injustice with the current name of Columbus Elementary. I will name that there is some discomfort in changing the name of the school and taking a stand to represent the courageous woman, being the courageous human being that achieved so much because of incidents in her personal life. Though we will never find a perfect person with a perfect life, and to think that our students, to reflect on our students that we teach them to try their best and be compassionate and inclusive human beings. And this time, I ask you that you join us in this action in naming Dolores Huerta Elementary School to show our students that you also see the change in the world and you want to be advocates with them. Thank you.
Miss Janice Thomeyer.
Thank you, Board. I am finishing up my 5th year as principal at Columbus Elementary and my 29th year in Tulsa Public Schools. I am a graduate of Tulsa Public Schools, and both of my daughters have spent their whole careers in Tulsa Public Schools. So I come to this as not only an employee, but as an alumni and as a parent and as a resident of Tulsa Public Schools also. So I want to express my appreciation to the school board for allowing me this opportunity. While I have been at Columbus, I have tried to build a culture where our students feel safe coming to school. A school that will give our students a love for learning and a place that they can look back at and say proudly, I went there and I learned to be a better person. Tonight, you have the chance to take that goal one step further in renaming Columbus to Dolores Huerta Elementary School. The good that Ms. Huerta did for the immigrant Mexican workers by improving their working conditions and wages and advocating for women's rights and education gives our students someone to look at as a champion for a cause. Someone who fought for what she believed in. In a 2015 article in which Bakersfield, California interviewed Ms. Huerta and her 7 daughters, her daughter Angela said that they witnessed the adversity, challenges, and hate their mother faced and never gave up. She realized her children made sacrifices because she was gone a lot. The daughter said that this taught them to be compassionate and to be able to make sacrifices for other people. I want our students to realize that there are times when they're going to be faced to make hard choices and forced to make hard choices. I want them to have an example of someone who had tough choices to make, and in doing so ended up helping more people than she may even ever realize. As a school that has more than 60% of its population of Hispanic heritage, and being located in an area of Tulsa that has many businesses owned by the members of the Latino community, then renaming Columbus to Dolores Huerta Elementary is a good choice. Schools exist for our students. The students are the reason we get up every day and stay late and work weekends and even sometimes make tough choices. We have a responsibility to our students. To prepare them for life, and that includes making sure the name of our school provides them with an example of believing in a cause and leaving this world a better place. I went into education to make a difference. When given the task of renaming our school, the committee didn't make the comfortable choice. The committee made the choice that is right for our students and community, and could even be what spurs a student into advocacy in the future. In a recent TED Talk that I watched, Verna Meyer said that at some point, everyone should face their biases and walk towards discomfort. For some people, renaming Columbus to Dolores Huerta Elementary is their discomfort. I am asking you to recognize that discomfort and run towards that discomfort. And in doing so, you do the right thing for the 385 students that go to school there. I want them to look back to 2018 and the people who said, "Si se puede." Yes, we can.
that, I'll call for a motion to approve item F2.
So moved.
Second.
I believe Ms. Keller has some comments.
I do. Thank you, President Shriver, and thank you to all of our speakers who came and spoke so passionately on both sides of the issue this evening. I wanted to talk just 1 second about a little bit more about our process. When we began meeting, we had some discussions about where we wanted to take the naming of our building. And one of the things that was really important was that we use this opportunity to honor someone who maybe has not been honored in the way that they should have been in the past. This was a great opportunity, and we didn't want to miss that chance. So as a committee, we began meeting, and there was Ms. Tamir, the principal, a teacher, a staff member, an alumnus, a student, myself, and a member of the Columbus Neighborhood Association. We met 5 times over the course of 2 months. We sent out an initial survey requesting name suggestions, and then we met and discussed those, and in the end we sent out another survey, the final survey, which had 4 names on it. On that survey, as some of you know, over 70% of respondents replied favorably, very favorably, to renaming Columbus Elementary to Dolores Huerta. So I believe that Ms. Huerta represents the diversity and the character and the courage that the Columbus community values most. Her selfless fight to secure a better future for generations of Americans is admirable, and it's something that I am very proud to recommend tonight. So I am overjoyed to take this vote on Dolores Huerta Elementary School.
Seeing no other comments, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Shelton?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. That brings us to item... I'm not trying to stop celebration. I just know we have a long night, so just keep it rolling. We're going to go to F3, which is a motion, discussion, and vote on motion to postpone the effective date of renaming Robert E. Lee Elementary School to Lee School until the conclusion of the regularly scheduled board meeting on August 6, 2018. And here are the rationale. On March 15, 2018, the board rescinded the name of Robert E. Lee Elementary School effective July 1, 2018. The ad hoc committee tasked with providing a recommendation for the school's new name submitted its recommendation of Lee School to the board for approval on May 7, 2018. While the board approved the recommendation in a 4-3 vote, the school community has voiced significant concerns about the propriety of the recommended name. Given the concerns of the school community, the public comments of several board members since the approval on May 7th, and the feedback from the wider community, there is good reason to allow additional time to receive and consider additional input from a broader cross-section of the school community on the new name of the school. The recommended action will not change the effective date of the rescission of the name Robert E. Lee School. From July 1 through August 6th, the school's official name will be its site code. And we have several speakers on this evening. And we're going to start with Mr. Brian Hall. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to... Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Autumn Wharton.
Good evening. It's good to see everyone again tonight. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. I know that I've spoken on this issue before as a parent of a daughter that attends Lee and also a Tulsa Public Schools graduate. So I will be brief. What we've seen over the course of history, time and time again, is that movements of social change and social issues usually lead with policy. And so what I hope is that as we look forward to this opportunity to rename the school, that we can really focus on the policies and decisions that we need to make to really move this work forward, to move the work of equity, inclusion, and diversity. Policy leads before hearts follow, and we know that. We've seen that time and time again. I did want to take the time to thank President Schreiber, Dr. Decker, and Dr. Gist for your reflection and bravery in the weeks following the vote to rename Lee, and really talk about how we have an opportunity to come up with something so much better. And I think that there's a real appetite for that. Following that board meeting, we had a parent petition that went out to members of the school community that were in support of really diving into some additional conversations around the school name. So I'd like to read some of the language from that. We, as parents of Robert E. Lee Elementary School students, respectfully request that the Tulsa Public School Board delay the effective date of changing the school name from Robert E. Lee to Lee School until a more fair, open, and inclusive process is undertaken regarding the appropriate and final name of the school. We ask this for two reasons. One, because we believe that changing the name to Lee is not enough to erase the original intent behind the naming of the school, which was exclusion and oppression. Number two, the decision to keep the name Lee was brought about by a small number of individuals who sought a conclusion before a process ever occurred. By taking this approach, the name seemed a foregone conclusion and discouraged others from making their opposition heard. Specifically, we ask that the effective date of the name change be delayed until the following occur. A broader and more inclusive ad hoc committee be formed, including representation of the superintendent or the superintendent herself and Tulsa community members at large. A neutral party with expertise in a relevant area be appointed to host a series of facilitated discussions amongst parents of Lee students, teachers, and other concerned citizens regarding the name, history, racial bias, and other topics related to the name change. And a more thoughtful and inclusive process is undertaken to assess parent opinion that includes understanding the difference in opinion by demographics. We would like for the board to take an official vote on whatever recommendation comes from the more inclusive ad hoc committee after the above steps are completed. So that petition was signed by over 50 parents from the school, and it was right around the time school was getting out, so it was a little bit of a challenge to get the word out to folks regarding that petition. But there is an appetite for that, and I want folks to know that it's there's a large group of people that are interested in moving those conversations forward. If this were easy, it would have been done already. So I just want to acknowledge that I think it's really special that all of us have come to this place. We're all seated in the positions that we're seated in, whether it be in the parent position, the teacher position, the school board position, the community advocate position. All of us have our role in making a better decision for our kids, not just for the current students, but for the future. And so I hope that we will continue this conversation and broaden the ad hoc committee. Thank you.
Mr. Nehemiah Frank.
Good evening. So just to be completely honest with everyone in the room, I'm on such a high right now from seeing those two schools. We have two schools in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a place that witnessed the worst massacre in American history on African American lives. We now have two schools named after people of color. I know a lot of people know I'm extremely emotional, and I actually thank God for that. I believe it is the gift to be able to connect to people's past. And I was practically in tears over there, just to see us as a people, as one people, move forward. There are still people that say, oh, we can never be one Tulsa because of A, B, C, and D. Well, we just proved that we could be a one Tulsa. We just did that right now. So my prayer is that that the community goes back, we have these discussions, these difficult discussions about Lee, changing the name. Honestly, at this point in time, I hope that we don't even have to think about having the name Lee even on the building, because I think even that in and of itself would show that we can be that one Tulsa city. So I thank all of the board members for being brave enough to vote to push the needle forward in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and for America. Thank you.
Miss Joan Brown.
Nehemiah, I'm emotional too, so I hope I can do this. Dr. Gist, school board members, and fellow citizens, first of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you who are here today. I am especially grateful for the freedom to share my thoughts with you tonight. I am too a proud product of TPS schools. I'm also a pre-service teacher, a graduate student at OSU in Stillwater, and I teach pre-service undergrad teachers. I was very happy and excited to learn about the Teacher Summer Institute that you had this summer. And I would love to know more about that. I am also the very proud grandma of 2 students at Lee Elementary, Silas and Henry Barbour. I also have 4 more grandchildren that attend public schools in the greater Tulsa area. It is my desire that the next generation, our 6 grandchildren, will inherit not only a legacy of family values, but a call to citizenship within a community that values and respects every member of every class, gender, and race. I am encouraged to see the turnout of citizens as co-creators of communities coming together today to actively share in the process to make decisions that will affect the next generation. If you are here today, you are here because you understand the importance and the role of symbols in our community. School namesakes that are chosen with deliberative and fair process leave a strong legacy to the next generation. What is the message that we want our children and grandchildren to receive? That's my question. As the community works together to co-create symbols and shared stories, it is our opportunity and responsibility to leave a legacy that represents the beliefs and values that we have as a society at this present time. A school name can have various meanings. If there is a question at all about the meaning of a symbol or a name, it's not a pure representation of the shared community values. It is not what we as co-creators of a community want to leave as a legacy for students today and future generations. I wholeheartedly support the delay of the implementation of the Lee school name. I would like all of those involved in selecting the name to think about these things. What name will offer the purest form of representation of our community as members who share in community? Will this name also come with symbols like t-shirts, slogans, team mascots that we can say purely represent what our community stands for? Does the name we are choosing now clearly stand without a doubt for human value, human dignity, and a caring, compassionate society? Is it obvious and clear to others that this is what our community proudly stands for? Together in unity. So what is the message that you as citizens in our community and respected school board members would like to co-create for the generations to come? Thank you.
Mr. Shane Matson.
Thank you, School Board. Dr. Gist. My name's Shane Mattson. I'm a Lee parent of 2 boys. One just left, headed to Edison. Also, proud graduate of Edison High School myself. Today I accepted the opportunity to participate in the new ad hoc committee by email with Suzanne Schreiber, so this vote goes forward. I will be an active and enthusiastic participant in the new committee. But I do want to point out a couple of things about the process to where it is today, or how we got here. I'm not actually sure how we got here, but the survey that was published and people participated in had 837 people vote on it. 382 represented themselves as Lee family members, 32 teachers, and 423 were just other. With the name Lee, 499 strongly agreed, and 172 strongly disagreed. The next closest strongly agree was Harper Lee at 78, followed by S.E. Hinton at 70. But breaking that down further, 256 people that represented themselves as Lee families strongly agreed with the name Lee. 61 strongly disagreed. That's 67% of the Lee families that voted strongly agreed for the name Lee. And it's really easy to attach a racial connotation to this elementary school, and which has been done. And what has been lost is that half of the homes that are in that neighborhood weren't built in 1921. And they came in the 30s and the 40s. But that school has been the bright star of that neighborhood for 100 years. And people care about it. And whatever your position is on it, that school embodies the same values that you just described. I mean, I think that it's the most racially diverse school, the most financially diverse elementary school in TPS. So we've got that. Those boxes are all checked. So as we move forward, let's remember who we are and what we have done as a community, which is, embrace these kids, whoever they are, wherever they come from, because we're all better. All of those kids are better through all of our participation. On the agenda item tonight, it says that the school community has voiced significant concerns about the proprietary of the recommended name. That's a misleading statement. Some members of the school community have expressed that, and Autumn Wharton has just identified that 50 people signed her petition, and the last time I checked, I think 183 people had signed her petition. This whole process has been incredibly divisive amongst personal relationships, people that I don't know, and it's really been unfortunate to watch this beautiful community suffer from this. And I hope that this next year we can rebuild that, because that's what ultimately matters. The survey that was referenced in the Tulsa World and that you're talking about here was emailed out to parents with the following words: please share only with people you know to be in full support of a name change, and preferably not publicly on social media. Now, that's not how we communicate. We have a PTA, we have meetings, we're grown-ups, we can deal with conflict. You can't secretly pass things around and expect for a good outcome. It's going to be a complicated outcome with anger and sadness on all sides. At the end of the day, it's going to be a great elementary school because the parents make it such. That's what we do. The school is only as good as the parents of the kids that go there support the faculty. So I look forward to whatever happens next, and commit myself always to Tulsa Public School. Go Eagles.
Mr. Dennis Stacklin.
I'm Dennis Stacklin, lead parent myself. Boy, it has been a long process. Love the energy I'm seeing in this room, though. It's what's got me up here. I do want a yes vote to move this conversation on tonight, because I didn't see much transparency in the last ad hoc committee, and I think I just found out today that there's another ad hoc committee, and, you know, how did we come there when most parents I talk to, you know, don't know anything about this ad hoc committee. And I don't understand how all these other schools have such success with changing their name, and we're having such, you know, it's just, we're having a tough time moving forward. I think we do need open conversation and involve the entire Lee community and not come up with these committees without giving everybody the opportunity to sign up for these committees. You know, so, you know, my suggestions tonight was, you know, this whole process has to be open. It's got to be a public forum. You know, the last ad hoc meeting was, most of these meetings, you know, it was all hearsay. We were hearing rumors, what's going on. We had no idea what was going on as parents. And, you know, and you know, the item agenda tonight is to seek a broader, you know, opinion of the community, and I hope that's what we're going to accomplish going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Joshua Schultz.
Thank you to the school boards. Dr. Gist, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And thank you for having the courage to slow down a little bit and to think about what we should name the school and what we should have, what kind of input that we should have. My name is Joshua Schultz, and I'm a father of a rising second grader at the school on the corner of 21st and Cincinnati. And I encourage you to support this motion, to take more time, to have some dialogue. And I'm going to focus today on what hasn't been said yet. And that is, why can't we just call it Lee? It's so much easier. We don't have to spend money. We don't have to change the signs. And I'm here today to tell you the reason why it can't be the Lee School anymore. Why we need to seize the day and choose a name for this school that reflects our values and reflects the progress that we have made over the course of history. Thank you. I'd like for you to imagine with me an alternate history. One where when Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, the Confederate soldiers laid down their arms and they took on self-reflection and they said, we've done wrong. We were wrong to fight to tear up the United States and secede. We were wrong to hold another racial group in bondage for hundreds of years. So not only are we going to move forward, but we're going to start teaching trades to the freed slaves so they can have a decent start. And we're going to acknowledge that what we did was wrong. That didn't happen, did it? Well, a generation after the Civil War, there was a history that was promulgated and taught in public schools that was just as false as the one I asked you to imagine. And from that, we got Jim Crow, and we had voter intimidation. And that's called the lost cause ideology, and it's where the Ku Klux Klan came out of, and it was in the early part of the 20th century that was the dominant revisionist history. And against that backdrop, the school at 21st and Cincinnati was named the Robert E. Lee Elementary School. Against that backdrop, that's why it was named. It came out of the lost cause, and we need to seize the day, and we need to pick a new name. And so if we say, why can't we just name it Lee? Because for 100 years, it was the Robert E. Lee Elementary School. It was a symbol of the lost cause ideology. Their mascot was the rebels until the time that I was that age. In 2014, or thereabouts, there was an image of Robert E. Lee placed up right next to the image of Dr. King, right in the same week as Martin Luther King Day, with the lines, "Two great American heroes." If we just call it Lee, then we fail to reckon with the history that's happened. If we fail to repudiate the lost cause ideology and the legacy that Robert E. Lee's image, statue, portraits symbolized, history will judge us. So thank you. Let's have this conversation. Let's talk about the history of this school. When people ask our children, why is your school named what it's named? Let's have them give an answer that we can all be proud of. Just like the kids at the Wayman Tisdale School and the Dolores Huerta School. Let's give our kids that chance. Thank you for your opportunity to speak. I look forward to this conversation to come, and long live the School of 21st in Cincinnati.
Ms. Taylor Painter-Wolf.
Okay. My name is Taylor Painter-Wolf. I teach art at Lee, and I'm a Booker T. Washington graduate. Hornets. So I know you all are already very familiar with me and my opinion on this. I really do hate speaking in public. I know you probably don't believe that because I've come before you a few times, but third time's a charm. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you very much for having this on the agenda tonight, and thank you for hearing the concerns, and thank you to those who voted no to the previous proposal and to those who spoke at the May 7th board meeting with so much honesty and introspection. It's really refreshing to see that from leadership, to see people share their process and really be honest. So that was very inspiring. So I am going to speak quickly on behalf of a Lee parent, Brianna Dodson. She could not be here tonight because one of her children is sick. So she asked me to share her words for her. So now, speaking as Brianna Dodson. When discussing the names of schools in TPS in the 10 years I have lived in Tulsa, I have rarely ever heard someone call a school name by its full name. Almost every school is shortened in conversation, but sometimes they are even shortened on the building itself. In previous meetings, people have expressed concerns about benches and signs that bear the name Lee School. If the change is to truly be a change, then shouldn't there be an expectation that signs and benches need to be changed to reflect that change in name? If a school has existed for 100 years with a sign outside proclaiming Lee School, but was really named Robert E. Lee Elementary School, then is it actually a true change to the name if there is no change to the colloquial reference or the signage? When TPS determined the names of these schools needed to be changed, then the spirit of that intention was that the reference to the person they were named for should no longer stand. However, the reference to Robert E. Lee Elementary has always been Lee School, so keeping any part of that name is, in essence, maintaining that reference. And that is not keeping with the spirit of why the board has asked for this process or this change. In 3 years, it will be the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. We will remember firebombs being dropped just blocks north of this school building. Hundreds of black bodies piled up in the Arkansas River, according to my father-in-law, like cordwood. When we look back on this year and this process, will we really be comfortable with our complaints that it was painful or difficult? Will we be satisfied as a community with shrugging and saying that we did the best we could, or settling for a lesser evil when we have the opportunity to truly make a change and look forward to the next 100 years of educating upcoming generations, regardless of the makeup of the community or skin color in the hallways? We can truly be the change we want to see in coming generations by not being content with what the past in Tulsa has done to some of its citizens, but what the future can do for all its citizens. So that is Ms. Dodson's words. And I obviously, speaking as me now, I obviously echo her sentiments. And I had some other things I want to say about Policy 8102 and all of that. I never thought I would know so much about school board policy. But I kind of want to just say, you know, look what we've already done here tonight. I feel like that's really all that we need to look to see what is possible for Lee School as well. You know, you all voted, you all saw fit to change Jackson, Columbus, Choteau, Lee, and now we have, you know, this amazing display here tonight. People are saying it's a top honor, it's inspirational, it is wonderful for our students. And are we really going to, you know, move forward like that in 3 of these cases, but not in 1? Is that really finishing the job here? If we do that, is that really moving our city forward and our district forward if we just leave one of these things undone? So I guess I would just like you to, you know, really think and really search your heart and think, you know, despite money for signs, t-shirts, benches, all of that, like, is a change from Lee to Lee really a change? Is that really what you wanted to see when you voted to change these names? Thank you.
Our next speaker, I'm positive I'm going to mispronounce the name, but I'm going to say Exan Hune. Vaughn, great. Come and help us get it right.
Hi. Thank you for taking the time to hear from concerned citizens about various matters impacting our children. So my name is Swan Hoon, and I teach at Hamilton Elementary. I've been in Tulsa the past 6 years, seeing the education landscape shift. Some decisions have been better than others. Let's not make the mistake with the renaming of Lee, if we can really call it a renaming. Robert E. Lee Elementary to just Lee School. Dropping the Robert E. is not enough to erase the legacy of a racist leader who supported the cause of the Confederacy, the cause of keeping black men, women, and children enslaved, powerless, trapped. Pushing along the agenda that certain races, that how you look determines freedom. How can we choose to push the legacy of a man who does not align with the values of TPS, of even humanity? Can we stand before our children, our students with black and brown skins, my Laurel, Theodore, Jamarcus, Nevaeh, Julian, and Hydran, and say that TPS is pursuing equity for every single one of them? I know there's power in a name. The name of the school has been in existence for nearly a century. As we move into a new century, there should be power in a name that gives all hope, all a reason to believe that they are worthy and valuable just as they are, and all can believe that this America, this Oklahoma, this Tulsa is made for you, me, and all of our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Brent Wolf. Mr. Brent Wolf.
Good evening. I'm Brent Wolf. Thank you, board members and Dr. Guest, for undertaking, I know, a risky and difficult issue of renaming. I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that. I attended Tulsa Public Schools. Our daughter graduated from Tulsa Public Schools. I happen to be the wolf in Miss Painter Wolf that I proudly represent. I'm a resident of Tulsa community. I also, my profession was in nonprofit and with Tulsa County, and primarily was involved with collaboration and partnership with Tulsa Public Schools for most of my professional life. I also pay taxes. So I feel like I have a stake in this issue. I also believe that, yes, the current members of Lee School should have a say in the naming of this school. But more importantly, this school belongs to all of us. We are all a part of this school, not just the current attendees or even the past attendees. You eloquently stated the history of how this school began. I don't think it could be overstated. I'll say it quickly. The Civil War may have ended slavery. It did not end white supremacy. Robert E. Lee represents that in every possible way and continues to represent it. I don't think I need to point out the irony of now having a progressive school system that is grappling with racial healing and racial diversity and the Greenwood Massacre, yet still having a school named Lee. There's a lot of discordance going on there. There is no difference between Robert E. Lee and Lee. They're exactly the same. I also understand the discomfort of change. Change is not easy. However, the change does involve some suffering compared to the suffering that has gone into the naming of the school. It is minimal. It is minimal. This naming is obviously not just about a name. This is about a community. This represents our community. This says who we are. Do we want to still be part of that history? I say no, we should not. I am a member of a religious community that believes in love, mercy, and justice. I would not usually appear before the school board in a t-shirt. I'm not a flasher. But as a child of the 60s, I wear what I believe. I assure you, keeping the name Lee is not just, it is not loving, and it is not merciful. I urge you board members, please to take a position of leadership. Please take the risk of being leaders and understand how significant this decision will be. Please exhibit, as Lincoln would say, our better angels. We need our better angels here to guide us in this decision. So I am urging, I am imploring that you, yes, vote yes to postpone, and yes, I understand the challenge of renaming a school. However, I don't understand the name, the challenge, I don't understand rescinding the name Lee. There is no challenge there. That is an easy decision to make. So please, please take your positions of leadership and consider this. Thank you.
Mr. Chris Bernard. Chris Bernard.
I get the advantage of going after all these wonderful people and just summarizing. So you've heard from me a lot already, as well as Taylor and Autumn, but I think the point I'd like to make tonight is the three of us, as well as the smaller community at Lee, went through a lot to try and engage individuals at that school. And what you're seeing is more diverse voices coming out today, and I guarantee you, as you move this process forward, you will see more. The nature of any civic engagement or process is that it's harder to hear from the marginalized than it is for those who feel empowered. And at Lee, they are diverse. economically and racially compared to other schools. I can tell you as a product of Lee, a parent of a Lee student, somebody who grew up in that community both in a nice craftsman house and then in a one-bedroom apartment across the street from that school, you know where you sit in that pecking order. And it is harder to engage the families who do not feel like a part of that community. So what I want to talk about is the process afterwards and the leadership we need from all of you and the school to help engage that community in the process and bring the entirety of the school voice to bear in this decision. It's something that will be hard. It can be done, but I think the petition speaks to, Autumn referenced 50 parents. Those were the names we could confirm. There were 180 names on the petition, but that took a lot of work and a lot of notification, and the language referenced around it was out of fear that those voices would be squashed again. What we saw at the beginning of this process was a small group of people tried to hijack it before it started and keep it at Lee, and that was exactly what that was designed to avoid. So what I would like to say is thank you, first of all, for taking a second look at this and hopefully taking a new vote in a different direction tonight. But a point I would like to make, school is a larger community. No individual school exists in a vacuum. And though you've heard it in the applause, I think it could be powerful to say, any individual here who feels hurt personally, ashamed of the name Lee, or saddened by the name Lee, please stand up. And I think that shows you how many more voices you have left to hear. Thank you.
Mr. Eddie Wells. Eddie Wells.
Thank you for letting me talk. I apologize for being short of breath. I'm on the backside of a bout of pneumonia, so I can't get a full breath in. And now I've had to change my whole speech after listening to everybody. I can solve the whole Lee School issue like that. When he was a member of the United States Army, he took an oath to defend the country, defend the Constitution, and never bear arms against it. And he took up arms against it. That's just facts. That's a traitor. That's treason. That's Timothy McVeigh. So now that I've settled that problem, I actually came here to give a name. There was a guy named Ernest Evans, half Cherokee, Quarter Creek, born upon Pawnee, graduated from Muskogee High School, graduated from the Naval Academy in 1931. He, past time, 1943, he was given command of the USS Johnston, which was a destroyer. And destroyer is a very misleading name. It's a really cool name, but they were little, they had no armor, 2 5-inch guns, or guns that shot 5-inch shells. They basically chased submarines. So they sent him off the South Pacific. Y'all can look it up, but Bull Halsey runs away. He's sitting there. Here comes the Japanese Northern Fleet, 24 ships, and the biggest battleship in all of World War II, the Yamada. Evans turns USS Johnston around and charges it, sinks one cruiser, hurts another one, blah, blah, blah. Gets blown off of the bridge, rips his hand off, goes to the back of the boat. I'm not a Navy guy, so I know it's not the back of the boat, but that's where he went. Got the steering wheel, or whatever it's called, and kept going back into the fight until they completely killed the ship. He gets hit with an 8-inch shell, disintegrates him. But if he hadn't done what he did, the Japanese could have came up and shelled the beach where the Marines were and destroyed him. He saved the day. There was a lot of heroes that day. He was given the Congressional Medal of Honor. Presidential Unit Citation, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and I think a native Oklahoman, Native American. How can you go wrong with that? That's somebody they can be proud of, you know. I don't care how grandfatherly Robert E. Lee was. He wasn't a good guy, no matter what anybody said. So, anyway, Ernest Evans, you can all look him up on YouTube. And I'd like to hear the thing about the murders in 1921. I wrote a paper on that about 10 years ago. And it was at Standpipe Hill, matter of fact, 3 weeks ago. Climbed up there with my pneumonia. But anyway, thank you all.
Mr. Alvin Okonkwo. Okonkwo.
Good evening. Real quick, I just want to share a reflection. I'm ecstatic. I've had to check myself and my biases and my reflections. As people came up here, I made ideas of who I thought they were going to be before they showed up here, and they said things, and my heart jumped. And what we're seeing is a community and allies and people coming together for a good cause and for a good reason. And I want to start with my classroom, and I'll kind of go from there. My name is Alvin Okonkwo. I remember the first year in the classroom, I had the privilege of teaching kindergarten. I quickly learned it wasn't a job for the faint of heart. It wasn't a job that everyone understood. It was difficult. So you take a group of individuals, sometimes a rather large group, sometimes they're 5, sometimes they're 6. You help form this group of individuals into a community for the sake of rigorously preparing them for success, whatever that looks like, maybe the next grade level, maybe a job. We set agreements for how we wanted to live and learn, and we came up with a discussion box. We talked about everything. Our most interesting discussions came on the topic of race. It was uncomfortable and awkward. While we all understood that treating others poorly because of race was wrong, it was still awkward. I still felt dissonant. I felt this way. I felt some type of way. It was the type of way I felt when I left 71st and Harvard and drove to 48th and North Lewis. It was a feeling I had when I learned that my students lived in a food desert. It was a feeling that I had when I learned that the students that I served were projected to live 11 years less than their Midtown and Southtown counterparts. It was a feeling I felt when I saw the niece and nephews of Terrence Crutcher coming to school next week. It's a feeling that I learned when I learned that there are still people who have lived in Tulsa their entire lives and are just now learning about the Tulsa Race Massacre. It's a feeling I have as we have to come up here and talk about naming one of our schools, whether or not one of our schools should bear the names of a Confederate general, or at the very least a surname. The feeling that when we acknowledge that racism, the father of race, has become nimble. It is able to escape that first line of defense. Of course, we know you shouldn't treat somebody differently because of their race, because of their ethnicity, their creed. We're kind of good at figuring that part out, but racism is nimble. It dives in this place where we start to hear people not able to acknowledge that harm, but not able to reconcile that harm. We start hearing things like, "I didn't cause that harm. That was so long ago. This is our tradition." This is not our tradition. When I listen to folks say, "This is going too far. This is our heritage." No, it's not your heritage. Let us not confuse tradition for the cementing of hatred. Let us not forget what is done to us. One of us is done to all of us. We cannot be afraid of a future that won't come easy. This is hard. If you do not believe that naming a school Lee or Robbie E. Lee is a symbol of hatred, you're wrong. If you don't believe that, I would like you to at least believe that it's a symbol of disregard. You are disregarding the stories of people that have been left behind, the stories of people who've had their lives lost to slavery, native genocide, or any act of injustice. You are disregarding the generational pain that is passed down when you celebrate false heroes of a lost army. I'm proud to be in Tulsa. I'm proud to be a Tulsan. It seems like there's really progress happening here. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow. It's a process. We're starting to recognize that there are people who have been left out of the table. There are people who have been underrepresented. We're acknowledging our past and how it's still here. I look forward to this vote. I look forward to having more time to discuss a proper name. Racism is nimble, y'all. Don't let it get you. Thank you.
Miss Dixie Agostino.
Hi, I'm here today as a first-year Lee parent with 2 little girls at Lee, and I'm here because my kids are watching. I had to get a babysitter tonight, and I'm very blessed that I can do that. There are lots of parents who have the opinion to support the complete name change that we're not able to be here. But there are things that I want my kids to learn in this process, and what I want them to learn is that they can change things. Since we started this conversation, I've had to explain to my daughters what's wrong with the name Lee. And I've also had to tell them that the name hasn't really changed. What I want them to learn is that we can do the right thing even when it's hard, that we can do the right thing even when the majority supports the status quo. We can do the right thing even if our foundation loses donors. We can do the right thing because it's the right thing. The most important thing I want them to learn in life is not to settle and to fight for what they believe in. And I'm here today because they're watching me, and they're watching all of us.
Mr. Nate Morris, Nathaniel Morris, excuse me.
Good evening, Dr. Gist, President Shriver, members of the board. I want to echo what Nehemiah and Alvin said earlier. I'm also just very, very grateful for the words that are being spoken in this room. It is uplifting after several meetings that were disheartening. This is uplifting. I've been thinking a lot as I ruminate around this idea of this vote tonight about our kids. I've been thinking about what it must feel like to be a kid in Tulsa, in Oklahoma, in America right now, especially one of our students of color. There's this quote from Clint Smith, one of his more prolific poems that has been sticking with me. It says, what does it do to a child to grow up knowing that you cannot simply be a child? And it hits me, and I think about right now in America, what does it do to one of my soccer boys to see a kid, their same age, their same appearance, speaking the same language, forced from his family and forced to live in a tent city today in 2018 because someone else believed that your humanity was less than theirs. And I wonder what it feels like to be a young black man or woman, one of the young kids that I have had the privilege to work with over the years in TPS as well, living in North Tulsa and knowing that you are 3 times less likely to have a job in this city after high school, or 3 times more likely to be arrested by police before the time you turn 18, or that your life expectancy is 10 years less than your peer, your white peer a few miles south. I wonder what that feels like. I don't know, I will never know, but it keeps sticking in my head. And I'm sure there are people who have and who are maybe asking the question, well, what does this have to do with a school name change? What does this have to do with this discussion? I want to be very clear that we cannot have this discussion around changing the Lee name and not have the larger discussion around what it means. We cannot believe for a moment that keeping the name of a man who fought to perpetuate the enslavement of our kids' ancestors and who believed that they were not worth as much as he was is not a continuation of that same oppression that we've heard other examples of here tonight. And I want to be clear that we are not here and have not been coming here to change a school name. That's not what we're trying to do. We're here trying to change a system, because this is so much bigger than a school name. This is about dismantling that system of oppression brick by brick. As an educator, I've watched too many of my kids fall through the cracks of this broken system for things not to change. And as a community member, I've seen too many of my friends come up here to this podium and pour their hearts out week after week for things not to change, for tonight not to be a tipping point, and for the decision around tonight not to be unanimous. We are under no illusion that the changing of a name will not undo what's happened in this city, but it's a start, right? It's a small brick that we can start to take away, just as the now Dolores Huerta Elementary School and Wayman Tisdale Elementary Schools are bricks that we took off that wall. And I would submit personally that the renewing of Greenwood Leadership Academy is a brick that we can take from that wall. Renaming Lee is another brick in dismantling that system of oppression. I believe that how each of you vote tonight will signal where you stand in that effort. You have the ability and the power to begin building this city into something new. Tonight, you can stand up for our kids and tell them that they are worthy and that they are powerful and that they are kings and queens and that they deserve the world in spite of what other signals in this nation may say. I'm really grateful that you all worked to bring this up, to keep this at the table. I'm grateful that we have a second chance to do what is right for our city and for our kids. I ask that you would take that second chance, postpone the naming of this school, truly consider a name that, like Nehemiah was saying, pushes us toward One Tulsa, with an ad hoc committee that resembles the school itself. And I ask that you take this opportunity to pull one more brick off of that wall. Thank you all very much.
Ms. Tara Carr. Ms. Tara Carr.
I would have to go after Nate. My name is Tara. I get to serve the Tulsa community as a principal, and I also live near Lee School. I will be sharing my time with Brian because I know that he didn't get his time, so my comments will be quick. I think the lesson that we need to take away from this is, why did this change pose such a challenge? We did not do this with the other two schools. And I heard people up here stand and say that Lee is a diverse school. Mr. Gilly and I Googled it. 14% of students are on free and reduced lunch. More than 60% of students are white. And I would like that to sit with us as we really truly think about why it is so hard for us to eradicate the name Lee, and why it was so easy for us to change it at Columbus and at Choteau. All right, that's all I have.
And if
You
I
can
may,
have your full 5 minutes. I thought you wanted to yield, but you're welcome to your full 5.
Again, I defer due to position in the speaking order, if that's okay.
Oh, okay, sure.
I think what I want to say after everything has been said today is that I too agree that this is more than a name change. And unfortunately, my wife was on the ad hoc committee member, and she faithfully and dutifully participated in the entire process and specifically spoke out to ensure inclusive participation of as many people as possible. Lee is what Lee is, but it's more than Robert E. Lee. We can get rid of, and in some ways we have gotten rid of, the Robert E. Lee portion. But as my wife has said here before, and our fear and concern is that that things will stop here with a name change. That nothing progresses beyond just the name change, and a lot of people in this room will feel good about having made a name change, but will not change their level of participation in their own elementary school, their neighborhood elementary school. So, you know, I am the parent of a child at Lee. Lee happens to be my neighborhood school. But none of this race massacre, issue is new to me. My maternal grandmother was a high school classmate of John Hope Franklin. And she was 6 years old during the race massacre. My maternal grandfather was a career educator in Tulsa Public Schools, at Carver Middle School, Booker T. Washington High School, and Central High School. This needs to go beyond just the fact that there's the name. It doesn't change the need for one to participate. I am involved in the school, and I would argue that many people 2 years ago chose for their children to go to Lee, or would have loved the opportunity to transfer to Lee, not because of the name, but because of the environment, the education. And so ultimately, as my wife did, in subordinating and participating in the community and subordinating her personal view to the process, whether or not the name changes or not, I need everyone who is just as passionate about the name change to be just as passionate about being involved in your elementary schools, your middle schools, and your public high schools. And remember, this goes, again, think of today. So we need to be just as passionate about fighting for school funding, for equitable distribution of resources, as we are in getting the Lee name changed. I take care of kids all over town in all schools. And reality, changing this name right now is one of only a few things on the list of important things to do. Thank you very much.
Mr. Richard Baxter.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Say it back. Good evening. Thank you. Interactive. Okay, I didn't prepare a speech. I don't do that. So, I also went to Tulsa Public Schools. Oh, Richard Baxter. I'm the founder of nonprofit organization Racism Stinks. Thank you. I think you all saw me standing over there looking a little lost. I'm going to tell two stories. I want you guys to just follow me, okay? Take this ride with me. We're going to take the long. We're going to go up 244, hit 169, but we're still going to get to Woodland Hills, all right? We're going to get there. All right, so let me tell you the first story, or it's kind of a scenario. We don't need any background music. All right, let me tell you this scenario. So here's the scenario. Imagine you're a child, right? And your mom asks you, say, you can be a real big help to me if you sweep up the floor, vacuum everything, put all the trash in the trash can, tie it up, and take it out tomorrow's trash day, right?
Yes.
Yes, I got to know you following along, right? All right, there we go. Take this ride with me now, come on. So, you sweeped up everything you did. You put all the trash in a bag. You put it by the door. Then you went and watched TV and fell asleep watching Golden Girls. So the trash didn't get taken out, right? Trash didn't get taken out. All right, so now I am somewhat of a product of Tulsa Public Schools. I went to McClure Elementary, which I spoke at before. Who said woo McClure? There you go. Somebody, at least we got one more. Nimitz, which somebody got rid of up here. Nimitz Middle School. My favorite of all schools. Memorial High School, which kicked me out twice. True story. And then I went to Edison, and I thought that I was too old to be there, so I dropped out. And we've all heard of the school-to-prison pipeline, correct? Okay, you're looking at them right here. I've been to prison. I've been to prison. I was kicked out of school and all this stuff. I didn't know that the school-to-prison pipeline was a real thing until, you know, a good friend of mine over here had a seminar, and I had to put, you know, stickers on all the little sheets on the wall, and I started getting teary-eyed, realizing what had happened to me. So in prison, I met some people. Of course, there's people there. I met some people. I met, like Racism Stinks was being built in me for a long time ago. And so these people I met some Aryan brothers. I met Aryan brother, and he was actually one of the first guy I met when I walked into prison. He was like the guy who would make sure you know where your cell is, and he was a trustee. And he was playing tennis, or table tennis I should say. He's playing ping pong. Big, huge white guy. He had Hitler in the middle of his chest. I knew that because of the mustache. And he had, you know, burning crosses, people with the hoods on, the KKK. And then he had some other guy tatted on him who I did not know. Who is that guy? Oh, that's Robert E. Lee. True story. This is my life. This is 2002. And, you know, Robert E. Lee on Aryan Brothers' chest. I didn't know his face, you know. I don't know if I'm going to say that was Tulsa Public Schools' fault or not. But, you know, there's a lot of teachers in here, I don't know. But the end of the story is, you know, take out the trash. Don't leave it by the door. Don't do 1, 2, and don't finish, you know. Take out the trash.
Mr. Kevin Gustafson.
Hello, thank you for your time. I want to start by saying that I wholeheartedly support the motion that's being put forth to have more time to consider the name of the school. One reason is I have a friend in Austin, Texas, whose son went to a Robert E. Lee school, and they got to go through a lengthy process. They had several meetings, and they got to talk about what does our school mean to us, and they came up with a list of names, and then they voted on it. And they changed the name to a local person who did depression area photography. So I was really jealous that they had a chance to have a public conversation within their school about this. And I was really jealous that the only place that we have had is this room to come and publicly voice our opinions, because we weren't able to do it publicly where people could learn from what other people have to say. Because I really think there was not enough information for the people who still want the school to be called Lee School. A lot of them are just doing it out of tradition and nostalgia, and it's not Robert E. anymore, so we got rid of the bad part, and now it's just Lee School. It's and I think a lot of people really believe that. And I do want to say that I know people on the other side have expressed a lot of unhappiness about how our school's been branded a racist school, because I truly don't believe that a lot of the people who voted for this are racist. And I remember hearing someone speak last time about it's the moderate middle who are uneducated, and we need to do that. We need to have this process to try to help educate people and so that people can have educated decisions. And I have to say that I've heard some bad things said about Robert E. Lee today, and Robert E. I have my 9th great-grandfather is Robert E. Lee's 3rd great-grandfather, and so just happens to be. And my family historian has told me that back then that the allegiance to the state was stronger than to the Union. And so, it's fair, we need to have these discussions and say, there are a lot of people who want to honor the tradition and honor the Robert E. Lee as a person and say maybe it wasn't all that bad. He didn't, and after the war, he didn't want to be separated. He wanted to come back together, and he didn't want his image to be used as any form of hatred afterwards. And so there's probably a lot of reasons just because of his involvement in Civil War that may have been a reason enough to take away the name. But my issue is that generations later, as Josh talked about and many of the people have mentioned, his name was used as a form of hatred and as a way of keeping people out, like saying, African Americans don't belong in this area. It was timed with the race riots and et cetera. So, and I strongly believe that just taking away the Robert E. Lee does not. Now say, who is the school named after? Well, it was named after Robert E. Lee, and now it's Lee School, so it's still, and it will still be part of the history, even when the name's changed. It was originally named Robert E. Lee, and it's changed because of this reason. So anyway, I just want to say that that Robert E. Lee wouldn't have wanted this. He doesn't want his name to be the symbol of the alt-right, but still, I think the name should be changed. Finally, I want to get to the survey, and someone mentioned before about the level of support. There were 25% that were opposed to the name Lee School in that survey, and there were 21% strongly opposed. And that does not to me, that means that there is not unity about this name. And also, it's an online survey. We don't really know what the true survey would be for our school or for the community. My wife's a psychologist. She's done research. You can't trust online surveys. There was no limit to the number of times you could vote. So could one person have voted 400 times? I mean, maybe, maybe not. If we trust the numbers, there were still 21 strongly opposed to Lee School. Maybe there were more. So the other thing is that the more people learn about the true history, the more they start to change their mind and say maybe Lee School is not the best name for our school. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve item F3.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on the item? I'll call for the vote. Ms. Faith?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Before we move on, we'll speak quickly to, I think, some references to the ad hoc committee that will reconvene were made during comments. And so we have been having preliminary conversations with all of the ad hoc committees members that served the first time who's been a significant amount of time on this and invested, and all of those people have been asked, and several other have as well. And Dr. Gist and I will be communicating tomorrow about the new broader ad hoc committee who we will have a facilitator for to help have discussions like we've had here tonight. It's a little bit awkward and it feels like maybe not the most perfect forum, but I'm grateful for it and have enjoyed every minute, and I want to thank everyone for being here and sharing and showing us what we can do together. With that, we'll move on, or Dr. Gist? Okay. We'll move on to F4, amend item F3 approved on November 6, 2017 agenda to increase the amount of the contract with Education-Based Services, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to not exceed $427,000. The increase is due to additional speech language services, cost not to exceed $427,000, which is an increase of $7,000. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
I'll call for the vote. Ms. Fate?
Aye.
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 Moving to F5, approve the memorandum of understanding with the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education to accept the lottery grant funding to implement and/or upgrade instructional and training technology for the purpose of 1, innovating cutting-edge hardware and software, 2, curriculum materials, 3, machinery and equipment for new technologies and/or instructor training in the use of new technology. There's no cost to the district. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the vote. Ms. Shelton?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Moving to F6, amend the hourly rates of pay or annual salaries or as applicable of all individuals who are non-certified support staff, meaning support employees whose positions do not require teacher, principal, or superintendent certification, to reflect the pay increase required by House Bill 1026XX. This increase shall apply to all non-certified support employed during the 2017-2018 school year and be effective July 1, 2018. The wage adjustment of $1,250 shall be prorated for any employee who works a number of hours that is different than the full-time equivalent support employee defined by Oklahoma Statute Title 70, Section 261034. Is there a motion to, the cost associated with this $1.5 million, which is to be paid from the appropriate salary and benefit account?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on this item? Michelle?
I did want to clarify, so all individuals who are non-certified support staff, is this like all district administrators in the central office? Are we talking like executive level, chiefs? Could we have some clarity on this?
Yes, so all employees who are not considered certificated where a certificate is needed would be included, barring the superintendent. So the answer to your question is yes.
Okay, so the full-time equivalent for, or under the law is 172 days, 6 hours a day. It breaks down to about $1.22 an hour. So if you're someone who's a full-time, 12-month salaried employee, do you still get the max of $12.50 a year or $1.22 an hour for a 12-month period, if that makes sense?
I believe it's the max of $12.50, and I'm going to, now it's...
Just for clarity, it's the $1.22. So for example, if you have a bus supervisor who's working 12 months, their salary would be prorated to account for the $1.22, which would not be $12.50, it'd be almost double. It'd be about close to about $2,500.
So the law seemed unclear to me, and whether, it seems like as we were, like as the walkout was happening or advocating for this, what we have in mind is the school level support employee, the cafeteria worker, the bus driver. Does the law require that it's all non-certified staff up to the top level of the district, or that's just something that we are adding?
It's true that we have no discretion. The law is specifically for non-certified support employees, and so there's not a way to carve out individuals.
Yes, and I think an important clarification is that we're talking about support employees who are not certified. So we're not talking about folks who are in this action. So we have certified employees who fall under a different action, which is, these are not certified folks.
Clear as mud. Any other questions?
Well, actually, let me dive in because I do want it to be clear, and it seems like it's not. The law is very specific about this. Do you want to just restate that again, Jana, just to make sure that I didn't confuse it? I didn't intend to. I thought I was making it more clear.
Sure. House Bill 1026 requires that non-certified support employees receive this raise and that it be prorated. The term support employees is a term of significance that doesn't allow for us to carve out one kind of support employee from another. Anyone who is in this room whose position requires a certificate will not receive this raise. There are support employees in this room whose positions do not require certificates, and those individuals will receive the raise.
With that, I will entertain a motion to approve item F6. Oh, we have a motion on the table, excuse me. I'll call for the vote. Ms. Fate?
Aye.
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 Aye. Moving on to item F7, approve the 2018-2019 preliminary school budget and financing plan that has been prepared in accordance with Section 5154 of the School District Budget Act. The subject preliminary budget herewith presented to the Board of Education presents the details of the estimated revenue and expenditures that total $664,772,628 and $639,257.63 respectively for all appropriate funds. I'll entertain a motion to approve F7.
So moved.
Second.
And I think we have a presentation on this evening, so I'll turn that to Dr. Guest.
We do. Thank you, Madam President. We do have a presentation tonight, and I'm going to ask our Chief Financial Officer, Norberto Delgadillo, to review the presentation with the board and the public. And team.
And team, yes indeed. Good evening, Dr. Guest, President Schreiber, members of the board. I'm here today with two key members of my team, Jill Stopperworth, our treasurer. Wait. We have Kay Smith, our director of budget. You can wait. All right. So I'm excited to kind of get into a little bit of the details of our upcoming school year's budget. And so I think it's always important to just remind ourselves of our One Bold journey, along with what we consider to be our mission and vision and the work that goes into putting that together, right? So this is part of that underbelly of getting things completed. So the goals for tonight is to really do a summary of the FY18 and 19 revenue and expenditures, closer look at our investments for FY18 and 19, and then a glimpse towards the following year. And just take a moment to remind the board of our budget planning cycle. So during April and May, we have the legislature that passes bills. So as we know, this past April, May was very exciting. A lot of advocacy efforts that were going on to move some very exciting revenue bills. And then at the same time, we have the district assessing site and school budget requests. Then comes June, where we are now, where the board approves a preliminary budget for the coming year. And the budget that we're presenting as well includes some of the projected actuals for this current year. So we're presenting the preliminary budget for the upcoming year, and at the same time, where are we looking to be at the end of this year? September, October, we start looking at where we are with our enrollment, our weighted average daily membership. So that's around the time we get into rebalance and start having these conversations as to how does enrollment really look. December, January, we get into assessing what enrollment and the weighted ADM looks for the following year. And then the district receives a mid-year allocation, which then leads us into the mid-year budget amendment in March and April. So this is kind of like the continuous cycle we see as we go through the process. And so this is kind of like a real big picture of the budget. And we'll have, in a few minutes, we'll go a little bit deeper into some of the specifics. But I think it's important to point out that as we see across the approximately total revenue of $665 million, expenditures of about $639 million, that our focus is usually and always around the general fund. So when we look at about $154 million and $103 million, that's about $257 million in bond projects. We can't use that for other things. We look at $27 million child nutrition. That's to be able to feed kids and everything that goes into that work. And $20 million for paying the electric bill, which I hear is pretty large. It's a couple millions of dollars. And so then we're left with the general fund, which then really gets us into providing us some flexibility with what we can do. And with that, I want to turn it over to Joe to get into some of the revenue.
So,
yeah.
All right. Thank you. Tonight we're presenting to you the 18-19 preliminary budget. The funds included are the general fund, the building fund, the child nutrition fund, all bond funds, and the debt service fund. Each of these funds have specific purposes and sources of revenue. The general fund is our largest, as Norberto said, and it makes up about half of all the funds that we collect in a year. We use it for general operating expenditures that are non-capital in nature. Revenue sources include state aid, which is our largest source that is provided through the funding formula based on our student counts, and we're estimating we'll collect next year around $95 million. Our second largest source is ad valorem taxes, which is a 39 mil levy on property valuations, and next year we will collect about $90 million through ad valorem taxes. Federal programs will provide about $30 million. Philanthropic grants and contributions are expected to be about $10 million, and motor vehicle taxes will provide about $15 million. 36.2% of all fees and taxes associated with motor vehicles goes directly to schools. One of my favorites is the school land earnings. The early leaders of the state saw a need for a permanent stream of revenue dedicated to education. It's managed by the commissioners of the land office, and it includes 750,000 surface acres and 1.2 million of mineral acres. They manage everything from golf courses, mineral leases, grazing lands, and a host of other things. And we collect about $6 million a year for that, from that source. The building fund is primarily funded by a 5 mil building fund levy. We use it for the repair and maintenance of our buildings, for the purchase of furniture, equipment, computer software, fire and casualty insurance, and security. The Child Nutrition Fund is used for all expenses related to the Child Nutrition Program. It's funded primarily by federal reimbursements for meals served, and as well as student and adult paid meals and some catering contracts. The bond funds are used for the construction and renovation of buildings, technology, textbooks, and buses. The source of these funds is voter-approved bond sales. The debt service fund, we use it to pay off the bond funds. We collect an ad valorem tax that is collected or calculated each year, and it's based on the principal and interest payments that are due that year, as well as any judgments against the district. We pay those out of the debt service fund. This next slide shows you how we're increasing our revenue this year. The general fund is going up $32 million, which to me sure looks like a lot, but that includes the $24 million for teacher raises. It also includes an additional couple million in donations and grants. We're estimating our federal programs will go up a couple million. And textbooks have been restored. Approximately $2 million we will get for textbooks. Textbook money has been cut the last couple of years, so it's kind of nice to get that back. The building fund is going to go up a couple $100,000, almost $300,000. We're estimating an increase, and that will be due to increased property values through the ad valorem taxes. Child nutrition, we're estimating, will go down about $700,000, and that is due to the fact that we have a declining student enrollment, and so we're serving less meals. Capital improvements, the bond funds, we're going to issue about $103 million this year. It's all part of the March 2015 voter authorization. After we issue this $103 million, we'll still have approximately $190 million yet to issue of that authorization. The debt service fund is going to go up about $7 million, and again, like I said, that's because of the principal and interest payments that are due this year. And if you look, the total increase is $64 million. Most of these funds are restricted. All the debt service fund is restricted. The bond funds are restricted. And the $24 million, as well as some other sources in the general fund, are all restricted. That leaves very little money for unrestricted discretionary money that we could use for supplies or to hire new teachers, extra teachers, etc. And so at this point, unless there's questions, I can turn it over to Kay.
Good evening, everyone. As you can see, our expenditure budget is going to increase about $71 million over what we had proposed in the amendment for the current year. And most of those funds, as Joe had said, are restricted in nature. You'll see that the bond fund and the debt service fund are going up, and in line to the amounts, the revenues are going up in those particular funds. And child nutrition expenditures are expected to go down to $700,000 that we are also projecting the revenue to go down as well. Same thing with the building fund. There's going to be a slight increase in the expenditures there. We're projecting about $38 million increase on the expenditures on the general fund side of the house, mostly related to the increase in teacher salaries and support salaries based upon the legislation that was passed this past session. This pie chart here represents the general fund expenses by object code. You'll notice that salary and benefits combined make up like 74% of the budget. So personnel drives most of the expenditures in the general fund. The funds set aside for the salary increases right now are sitting in the 8% slice of the pie under other objects. Once all the dust has settled on negotiations, we will be moving those to the appropriate accounts. I want to pass it back off to the boss.
All right. So let's take a closer look. I think get an ability to deep dive a little bit. And so the focus is on the general fund. It's one thing we've been talking about because approximately $64 million of The increase in revenue, $32 million tied to bond projects and debt service. So what are we left with? When we start thinking about the revenue and the fund balance, or total new revenue and the fund balance, we're about $359 million. Total spending that we're projected to be at for the upcoming year, $335 million. And that, as mentioned, includes the teachers and support staff increases. And so we're left with a fund balance of about $24 million. So we're decreasing the fund balance close to about $8 million. One thing I would want to point out, so if you guys are keeping track, is just to kind of refresh our memories as far as what a lapse appropriation is. So we project about $2 million in lapse appropriation. So clear example, you have a principal who's going to be going on PD, on a professional development seminar and whatnot. They may book that trip in May with FY18 with the current year funds, but that trip it's not scheduled to happen until September, which is the following year. So those funds are encumbered. So they're essentially set aside because at some point in the future, in the upcoming year, we're expecting those funds to be transactioned and to occur, to be absorbed. So that's one thing to keep in mind as far as we look at that. So when we start looking at the projected increase in revenue, we're looking at about $23.8 million. So yay, right? We're excited. This is great news. But to remind ourselves, this is specifically to support the increase in salary funding. And then the general ops textbooks. So part of the conversation has been about restoring about $50 million of revenue into the state funding formula, which we account for about $3 million of that. 1.8 is going to be for textbooks, and then the 1.2 is for general operating revenue. That's where we get that $3 million. And then increase in ad valorem, which is great, right? Property values are increasing, so we're projecting an increase of about $1.7 million. And then federal programs, we're expecting about $2 million. So these $2 million do carry over, but they're specifically for federal programs. So it's not like we can take that money and then do a variety of other things across the board. There's specific guidelines and restrictions that manage that money. So out of the increase in revenue, we're looking at $30.5 million. So with the $30.5 million, once you take out projected salary expenditures, the federal programs, we're looking at about $3 million in general ops funding, 1.7 in the increase ad valorem, and we've talked about maintaining the shift steady. I think that's been one common theme we've been talking about for the upcoming year, to really keep our staffing plan and everything in place. We're digging about $8 million. So as a whole, when we take that $8 million out of the fund balance, we look into the $3 million and 1.7, we're about $12.7 million of additional revenue that we're going to be investing into our district. And when we start thinking about those investments, I think it's important for us to keep in mind that, as I mentioned, we're holding the ship steady. Right? So keeping the staffing plan, investing in our schools, minimizing disruption, that translates to about $6.2 million. So that's a decrease in funding because of decrease in enrollment. Something that's exciting that we're working towards too is a pre-K transition. We want to make pre-K available for all for free, and so that carries a cost. We're looking at $2.4 million. We talked about the textbooks money. 1.8. And something else that we need to take into account as we consider our staffing plan and how we strategically support our schools is setting aside funds for additional allocations. So when we looked at our staffing plan, our goal was to hold the staffing plan to fidelity, but as we go through the process, we realize that additional allocations are needed to support the programs that are meant to support our students and whatnot. So that could be everything from an additional assistant principal to an additional teacher. It adds up. And so we set aside some funding to support that. Something else that we're doing this year to help ensure that we get our schools off and running for the upcoming year is the summer ramp-up work. So giving opportunities to our 9 months custodians, opportunities to other folks within our support teams to give them work over the summer, and that they can then prepare our schools to be ready for the start of school over the summer. We have a grant-funded ROSE. roles have been they're transitioning into the general ops fund, some strategic roles that the team has identified that we need to do. And then something else that's exciting is the managed print services redesign. This is something that we're looking forward to rolling out. We've heard from several school site leaders that the vein of their existence is our click charges. So we really are looking to implement a new policy that's going to make life easier for them. It will carry a cost, but at the same time, we're hoping that we pilot this approach and we'll see some good things come out of it.
Gilberto, can you say some more about that? Because it isn't, it's actually school leaders, but it's teachers as well.
Yes.
It doesn't sound exciting, but from a day-to-day experience and as an experienced teacher, it is fairly exciting.
We want to make it exciting. We want click charges to go away. So
I don't know if everybody knows what that is.
I know.
It's something that's been complained about the entire time I was on the board.
So at the end of the day, we want to have, we want to be able to implement managed print services that's similar to electricity, similar to the water. The teachers, the principals don't have to worry about paying the bill or a charge for plugging in an outlet. So essentially the concept is to introduce print services or printing as a service, like it's just default part of the system, so that we can then, or so that they can then not worry about keeping track of a budget for click charges, that I use too much paper, that I not do too much paper. So we're fleshing out the policy, but we're excited to be rolling that out.
And that we will be making sure that we're monitoring usage, that we're being frugal, just the same way that we do with electricity, that we have ways that we're managing that and making sure that we're being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, but that burden of doing that doesn't fall on the backs of principals and teachers.
Correct, yeah. So a few board meetings ago, we had an item with respect to the RICO contract, and there's some software, PaperCut, that is going to allow us to keep track of like spending patterns and whatnot. So as we pilot it, we still want to be able to get a chance to see if human behavior changed, right? So that's important, being able to keep track of, hey, this middle school, similar counts, whatnot, are spending so much more than this middle school. What's going on? So we're still going to be keeping track of that, and I think it's definitely going to be a new way of processing it that it's hopefully pays off. So with that being said, and almost done, I told you I was excited about this stuff. So it's like, upcoming plan for 2019-2020, right? It's like we haven't approved this year's budget yet, but it's so important for us to keep our eyes to the horizon and start looking 2-3 years outward, right? And with that being said, it's a reality of that as a declining as our enrollment declines, we're anticipating about $7 million less in state aid. So it's something we're going to have to keep in mind and keep track of as we start considering the upcoming planning. And as part of that planning, some of the initiatives we want to start doing is also get into zero-based budgeting. So we start approaching how we fundamentally budget across a district. We're looking to identify some savings and prioritize how we are managing some of our resources. And along with that, we're also looking to be assessing the staffing plan, because this year we went through the staffing plan, we tried to hold it to fidelity, but it was apparent to us that there's still so much need across school sites that we really need to take a hard look at the staffing plan and see what opportunities there are to correct some of those gaps that we might have seen when we went through the process. There were several meetings through the past few months regarding with the instructional team, the ILDs, and feedback they were getting from principals on like, how can we make our schools whole? So that'll be part of the conversation as we get into the next few months. Some energy management. I know it sounds not exciting, but at the end of the day, how we manage our schedules. If we're looking at a $6 million electric bill, what does it look like to be able to adjust the temperatures during off-peak hours, or adjusting schedules, excuse me, to moderate peak hours? And then, of course, grow enrollment. I think that is going to be key. We are in the early stages of developing a team to start assessing this as we start preparing for the next few months. So with all that being said, any questions?
I do have a question regarding the enrollment, and I'm assuming with the plan to grow enrollment, there's been a lot of conversations around the declining enrollment and where those kids are and what's happening with that, and I think it's important for us to talk about that, what you know about.
So some of the demographic data, we're just starting to dig in and starting to get a sense of, we understand there's some bubble shifts in demographic trends, but simultaneously starting to figure out how can we not just keep track of that for the next year or two, but what does that 5-year, 7-year outlook look like? Because as we start assessing declines in enrollment, we also want to start preparing for increases in enrollment, whether it's in different areas. And then there's other aspects to it. Some of the great things that are happening in the district that folks just don't know about, whether it's some of the exciting programs that our child nutrition team is performing and doing. How are we attracting families, and assessing a variety of different strategies to ensure we're taking a look at all avenues. And like I said, it's in the early phases, and we're starting to dig into it so that we can come up with a better cohesive plan that we can start assessing over the next few months.
I know we've had several conversations about it in leadership and different committees, and thinking about, is it virtual schools and the growth of the virtual charter districts that are just skyrocketing? Is there a low, less children within the TPS district that are being born or projected to be born? All those different factors that account for the decline. But I do think it's important for us to have a conversation specifically to talk about those matters with the public at some time in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Decker.
Thank you, President Schreiber, and thank you, Chief Delgadillo, for that great presentation. I wanted to again bring up the salary funding, the $23.8 million you mentioned here, and it made me think a little bit more about Ms. Shelton's question earlier about the non-certified support staff. So that's 1.5 million of that total, I'm guessing, or something like that.
Just from the perspective of how it's broken down, out of that 23.8, we're approximately 18.2 is for our certified certified staff, so teachers and that entire group. And when we look at our support salary, that 1.5 that we're talking about is part of about the balance, which is about 5.5 and whatnot. And again, these are early estimates as we start assessing where we are with our personnel. There's always some sort of savings as people maybe don't come on board until August or it's October or whatnot. So from a breakdown perspective, the majority of that is on the certified staff side.
One just small follow-up to that. So on the non-certified support staff, can you give me an idea of how much of that 1.5 million is to like higher level leadership, like directors and above?
Sure. I would say it's approximately between $125,000 to $150,000. Yeah. And that's out of the 5.5 million.
Other questions for Mr. Delgadillo? Ms. Shelton.
I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate in our finance committee meetings seeing how much you are thinking ahead, and not just next year and taking it a year at a time, but anticipating where will our numbers be 3 years from now. What can we start doing about that to make sure we're living within our means, so to speak. So thank you for your leadership in that.
Of course.
Seeing no other questions, I'll call for the vote on item F7. Ms. Fate?
Aye.
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 Aye. And that's going to move us over to our information agenda, which Dr. Gist will manage this evening.
Thank you, Madam President, and members of the board, and so many other Tulsans who are still with us in person and virtually. As a reminder, information items come before the board for their consideration. They are not acted upon when they are an information item, but rather are here for discussion, and will come back before the board for if they come for action, will come as either a consent agenda item or an action item. So I'll begin with items G1 through G10. These will be presented by our Chief of Schools, Dr. Eric Green. Dr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, Madam President, members of the board. Items G1 through G4 are routine renewals and memoranda of understandings. One with Ocean Dental, another with the Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy, a third with the American Red Cross, and a fourth with Oklahoma Caring Foundation. There's no cost to the district for those. Item G5 is a recommendation to pay optometrists participating in the Department of Health and Wellness student eyeglass program at a lower cost to students. Students who qualify for the program are based on economic need and lack of insurance are screened and referred to participating optometrists for eye examinations and eyeglass prescriptions, and to opticians for filling the prescriptions. The cost is not to exceed $6,000. Items G6 through G8 are routine renewals and memorandum of understanding. There's no cost to the district. Those refer to and are related to the Tulsa City County Health Department, an agreement with them, an agreement with the Youth Services of Tulsa, and an agreement with the Community Service Council and Ed Darby Foundation. Item G9 is a renewal of a memorandum of understanding with the Tulsa Classroom Teachers Association, TCTA, of Tulsa, Oklahoma, regarding teachers' participation in the school improvement grant at Hamilton Elementary School and the extra duty stipends that will be paid to teachers who participate in that program. Hamilton Elementary was awarded the school improvement grant effective July 1, 2017. All teachers affiliated with Hamilton will receive an $800. The teachers will be required to participate in 10 professional development days, 5 of which are outside contract hours, and will be compensated at the teacher's effective hourly rate of pay. Additionally, teachers may choose to work up to an extra 60 minutes per day to provide additional learning time for Hamilton students. This additional learning time allows a teacher to earn up to an additional $4,576 for the school year. The cost of all the affiliation, the professional development, and extended learning stipends is not to exceed $195,000, and that would be taken from the school's improvement grant. And item G10 is to enter into an agreement with the Domestic Violence Intervention Services, Inc., to provide curriculum and programming for district students in grades 6 through 12. DVIS will provide appropriately trained and experienced consultants to conduct these programs. The character development programs address risky behaviors such as drugs, sexual practices, bullying, and poor school performance. DVIS programs teach healthy ways of communicating and relating to others in order to stop the cycle of violence that's experienced by many of our TPS students, and there's no cost to the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Item G11 recommends approval of position creations and deletions, and our Chief Talent and Teaching Officer, Devin Fletcher, stands ready to respond to these questions if the board members have any.
Can you speak to the creations and their funding sources? If I'm reading it right, they're grant funded or federally funded, and one's through the general fund, is that correct?
For the positions that are listed today, they're two related to food services or child nutrition services, and those are out of a federal fund. And there's one create, one delete, and it's to operationalize the food service department, if those are the ones that you're talking about.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you both. Item G12 is a routine item that recommends ratification of E-rate contracts with multiple vendors. Our Chief Information Analytics Officer, Stephen Fedor, stands ready to answer any questions board members might have. Item G13 recommends renewal of the Greenwood Leadership Academy Partnership Schools annual contract and authorizes them to serve grades pre-K through second grade with a maximum of 560 students. Greenwood Leadership Academy is Oklahoma's first partnership school. The 2019-2020 school year is the second of 5 years of growth that, if approved, will reach a maximum capacity of 560 students in pre-K through fifth grade. And we have some individuals, I understand, Madam President, who've signed up to speak on this agenda item.
That's correct. We're going to begin with Mr. John Huffhines, who signed up to speak to this item, G1, G9, and G10 as well. So if Mr. Huffhines is still here, I think he's left, so we're going to move on to Ms. Lisa Scott, who will be speaking to item G13. Okay. From there, we'll go to Mr. Greg Robinson, who also signed up to speak on this item, and yield his time on the earlier matter regarding the renaming of Lee School.
Good evening, everyone. I've appeared before here many times. Today I appear in my position as the Director of Family and Community Outreach ownership, for the MetCares Foundation and Greenwood Leadership Academy. And I want to start today by saying that I joined Greenwood Leadership Academy and the MetCares Foundation because I believed in the mission to transform the life outcomes of North Tulsa students. And tonight you're going to hear of the strengths and you're also going to hear the struggles of our team, our family, as we have pursued this journey to transform things for the community that we love. And I want to set that atmosphere today because Greenwood Leadership Academy did not start because there was such incredible things going on within the state of education in North Tulsa. Greenwood Leadership Academy started to address a need. Greenwood Leadership Academy started out of the truth that we, not one individual, not a group of school board members, we as a community were failing our kids. And so this was our attempt as a community to address that. And I think that's evident in the numbers. We just heard a budget proposal that was pinned on a falling enrollment within Tulsa Public Schools. Greenwood Leadership Academy increased its neighborhood enrollment because we were able to stay a neighborhood school, right? Not go a charter route, stay a neighborhood school and increase the number of neighborhood kids that had access to what we believe is going to become an exceptional program. We also increased the number of kids that are active in pre-K. In the year before Greenwood Leadership Academy, the Academy Central School had 20 pre-K students in it. We opened with 59. We increased the number of kids that attend kindergarten. And as you'll hear tonight, while there's been some transition out, we have done what we said we were going to do in terms of engaging the community, and the community is bought in to that promise. And I think it's not because we were selling something that wasn't there. It's because we were committing to changing a problem ourselves. I think ultimately the reason that I am here so confidently asking that we support the continuation of this program is because when things go wrong, when challenges are faced, we're right there. Those challenges are our challenges. Just like they were our challenges before Greenwood Leadership Academy got started, and just like they will be our challenges. And so this is in every embodiment, from the teachers that grace those halls every day, the students, the families that are committed to giving their kids the best opportunity, to the name itself. This is our school, this is our program. And so as you hear that, I want you to understand that we embrace the struggle. We embrace the good with the bad, and what we are asking for is to continue in this partnership. Because as you can see, when we partner together, nothing but great things can come. So I appreciate you all giving us this opportunity, and I promise to continue working as diligently as I can, not just for the students in the school or the families at a school, but for the families and the communities of our North Tulsa as a whole. So I thank you for our time, and I'm excited to hear our presentations tonight.
Ms. Ashley Phillipson. Ms. Ashley Phillipson.
Hello, guys. Good evening. Thank you all who decided to stay out here this evening. Thanks for those who have come in support of Greenwood Leadership Academy. Thanks for those who are holding Greenwood Leadership Academy accountable to what we have said we are going to do. So both positive and constructive feedback and accountability is welcome. And to Superintendent Gist and the board, thank you for this space tonight. I'm the executive director at MetCares Foundation, and I've been at MetCares now since January. And every morning when I take to Pine to drive to Academy Central, I get this feeling of unparalleled pride. I moved to Tulsa because of the legacy of Greenwood. I moved here in 2012 to work in an education adjacent organization. And when the opportunity came, as Greg said, to wrest hold of our issues in terms of getting students equipped for success in school and beyond, I jumped at the opportunity. In terms of Greenwood Leadership Academy and why I beseech you all to renew our partnership, we do know that enrollment is something that is a priority of the district in terms of reclaiming students and attracting students, so we don't have a flight to the suburbs. And I'm a firm believer that partnership is a pathway to do so. It allows you all to retain students. It allows staff to be innovative and try new things. And I'm not pigeonholed into doing something the same way and maintaining the status quo, as Dixie said a while ago, referring to Lee. Things that I'm excited to shout out. Greenwood Leadership Academy turned out high numbers of parents every time we had a community engagement. Not a smattering, not 5%, but at least half of our parents would show up to our events, and that's something that is attributed to our teachers making profound connections with parents, to the work Greg Robinson is doing. So parent engagement, not doing to students, but doing with students and families, is a priority, and we will continue to build upon that. Something else that I'm proud of is the strides that we made. Our students, 60% of our students hit their math growth goals, actually outpacing the district, and I'm excited to keep building on that. You're going to hear later some areas for growth in terms of making sure we have consistent academic growth, and we have some provisions to do that. With a year of data under our belts, we now can formulate our fall PD, our ongoing PD, to be more targeted to making sure that we're bringing students along where they came, and we're going to have even more targeted professional development now that our team is full. We actually didn't start with a full team. So more targeted, responsive curriculum. I'm confident that we will surpass our academic outcomes. Second, I want to highlight that one other area of concern for our school. Greenwood did not have what we call an in-school suspension. If you look at our demographically similar schools, students once they're removed from the classroom can go to in-school suspension, thus preventing an out-of-school suspension, which is a huge priority of Tulsa Public Schools. We did not have an in-school suspension for our students, so our students were suspended. If I were to think about the biggest blip or the biggest delta, the thing to change, is figuring out a solution for when a student is not able or needs some time to have restorative experiences before they can come back into the classroom. Suspension should not be the way to do that. So we were told by district person Janetta Marshall to look to Anderson for examples. I'm excited to learn from other schools. As my time dwindles, a year is not enough time to prove what's possible. We are on a strong trajectory. We have the community's backing, and we have your support. I'm excited for the privilege to continue piloting this partnership model. I think that this is something that can work in multiple contexts in this district. I think that it shows that public schools are the answer. It keeps kids in the neighborhood, and it spurs innovation. So please do not cut our time short. Allow us the opportunity to continuously increase our effectiveness. Thank you.
Mr. Kojo Asamoah Caesar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Gist. Thank you, President Schreiber. Thank you, board members. I want to thank our wonderful parents who showed up tonight and are still here with us, and also the community at large came here to show support for Greenwood Leadership Academy. It is an honor and a privilege. My name is Kojo Asamoah Caesar. Honor and a privilege to serve as principal of GLA and to go to work every day and be in front of our most precious gifts, our kids, and try to be a great role model for them and show them that we care about them, that we love them, that we believe deeply in their potential and are here to help them reach that potential. I'm going to be very brief because I want you guys to hear from a parent and hear from our parents, because those are the most important voices really here, and we serve really at their pleasure. But what I'm most proud of, our mission is to transform the educational, economic, and social outcomes of North Tulsa kids, and we are 100% committed to that goal. We own our mistakes and seek to learn from them, and you have a humble partner in us, and we want the best ideas and the best practices from wherever they come to help us grow and learn and take feedback. That's how you grow quickly. And we're also excited about our successes and looking forward to building on those successes. I'm really most proud of when I talk to our parents and they tell me how excited the kids are to come to school. kids that we had a hard time getting through the front door in the beginning of the school year. Now I wake up even on Saturday mornings and say I'm ready to go to school. And just the joy factor, if we can create an environment where kids want to be and they're engaged in learning and they feel like school is a fun place to be, then that just gives us an opportunity to really take them to where they need to be. And so I'm very proud of that. Ms. Verna Scott hopefully can get some time to speak as she came a little bit later. But I wanted to read really quickly a note from Dr. Tiffany Crutcher just to highlight kind of the importance of this work. When I walk into a classroom and see Terrence Crutcher Jr. Sit in that class, it really shows you the weight of the responsibility that we have, and it's about, what are we doing to help ensure that he has a bright future. And his aunt, sent this message. She said, GLA represents what true community looks like, and to have my nephew Terrence Jr. start his education at GLA has been a godsend for my family. We know he is loved and pushed to reach his potential, and that does my heart good, and we want that to be the case for every single student in our school and in North Tulsa, and we're absolutely committed to doing that, learning from our mistakes and building on our successes. And I want one of our lovely parents, Ms. Verna Scott, to also come share some words.
Hello, my name is Beverly Scott, and my son is 7 years old. He's in the first grade, and he has been to 4 different schools in the Tulsa Public District, and we couldn't get him in the door, let alone get him to stay in the school. But when he went to GLWA, he had some trying moments to Mr. Kojo, all the teachers. He texts his teacher during the summer to tell Miss White good morning, how's she doing, checks on her, and he loves going to school. Mind you, there are some trying times still, but we couldn't get him in the door. Now we get him in the door, we can't get him out the door. So we want to make sure that GLA stays open to students like him, because he has ADHD and so many different things. He don't take change good, and when you can get a child like that to come into the school and love, and I can tell you, every teacher in that school knows Isaiah. He's not in their class, but they know him. And even the people that at Academy, they know him. So please, please, with all your heart, find it to keep us open for another year and on up into the 5th grade for my sake. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Danita White.
Well, I am Danita White. Thanks for letting me speak. I am a founding first grade teacher at Greenwood Leadership Academy, and I'm speaking on behalf of the renewal of our school. I have to say that this has been one of the best experiences I've had in Tulsa. I am not a Tulsan. I am from Virginia. I moved here in 2014. And, well, I'm kind of off my script already. Anyway, I echo everything everybody has already said, right? I could talk about my MAP scores. I could talk about how kids grew 44 points. I could talk about Isaiah, who, as his mom said, was at 4 schools before he came to my classroom. I could talk about how my kids sit and we have conversations about being an entrepreneur, and how some of my students want to start their own business to build headbands for our girls to match our uniforms. I could talk about those really great things, but the thing that's most important to me about our school is the community in North Tulsa. It's kind of an unparalleled thing I've never experienced before. I love that this school is bred from the community. We have a community that's deeply invested in our students. We have a mission that's deeper than just being another school in Tulsa. GLA is part of a bigger vision. You know, like, we're part of we know that a thriving community starts with great schools. But not only that, we know that working to empower the community is the most important part of that. We do that at GLA by hosting a series of parent academy. We host classes for parents to learn how to handle behaviors and to deal with their academics that their kids are learning. We give tips on how to be a community advocate, which North Tulsa so desperately deserves. Parents also have a strong voice at our school. We have a monthly meeting where they can have input and ownership in what goes on in our building. Our community comes and is involved in our classroom. I can't even begin to mention the amount of community volunteers that I've had come in and experience just my room. I've had people from the library, I've had doctors come in, we've had lunch where kids have cooked and had their families come together. We have events where local Black-owned businesses come and support. We bring together North Tulsa. And so I ask you today, we need you to renew our school. GLA is a community school. And as the old African proverbs say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The community is showing you that they're on board. Teachers is showing you that we're on board. Our administration is showing you that they're on board. Now it's your turn, board, to hop on board so that we can continue this partnership and go far together. Thank you.
Ms. Michelle Turnbull.
Good evening. My name is Michelle. I am a parent of a Greenwood Leadership Academy scholar and a member of Greenwood Leadership Academy's Parent Advisory Council. I come to you today to discuss the renewal of our school, and I'd like to start by saying thank you to everyone that is here tonight, because I enjoy being a part of our GLA family. We are a family, and I appreciate your support. One reason I believe we should remain open is the location of the education being given. GLA is located in North Tulsa. The disparities in regard to North and South Tulsa are staggering, from education to housing to food supply. This does not have to be the narrative with education, and Greenwood Leadership Academy should be able to continue breaking this cycle. It is impactful for me not to have to go outside of my community for something as fundamental as my child's education. Homework is taken, for example, homework is taken extremely seriously. It's given every day. The teachers check it every day, and it impacts their ability to participate in activities. This encourages my child to understand that, yes, we can have fun, but we have to handle our business as well. They gave homework on every break, fall, winter, spring, and they even gave homework during the strike, the whole thing. Education is not only for the student, it is also for the teacher, and GLA embodies this. My daughter's pre-kindergarten teacher recently received her master's degree from the University of Oklahoma in educational leadership. How excellent is it that I can explain to my daughter that even her teacher, a Black woman, still goes to school to enrich herself? This is called leading by example. GLA is predominantly staffed by Black professionals. This goes to my next point. They give representation in our community. It is important for my daughter to be able to see her people in a positive light. This means that, This means that she can see Black people as paraprofessionals and professionals, as nurses, teachers, principals. The sky is the limit. Tom Weisner, a TEDx speaker, talks about what he believes are the greatest factors in a child's development. He cites that the context of their upbringing is the greatest factor. This means family, neighborhood, community, and nation state. Right now, we are in the process of rebuilding and healing our community. GLA stands to become a pillar in our community where we not only staff Black professionals, but we become one of the greatest producers of Black professionals. Greenwood Leadership Academy is helping me to groom my Black professional. In an interview with Dr. Umar Johnson, he discusses the importance of teaching children how to acquire and protect power, political power, social power, economic power, in every sphere of human endeavor necessary for community success. GLA's vision embodies these factors by focusing on Black excellence. In regard to social power, they are already teaching our children with the acronym I CARE. I for innovation, C for commitment, A for accountability, R for respect, E for excellence. I was very proud when my child came home and told me that she received an I CARE ticket for compassion, for helping another student. In regard to the economic sphere, this was GLA's first year. I know we will be incorporating the economic piece, and I would like my child to be able to continue to be a part of this vision. So please support the renewal of Greenwood Leadership Academy.
Mr. Darrell Bright.
Dr. Giss, Madam President, school board members. Wow. You know, I know a lot of individuals that are associated with this school, known them for years. Good folk, you heard them. You know, the challenge that we have is that we have to use a model. We have to take to scale. We've got the same kind of issues on 31st and Garnett, 65th and Peoria, and 56th Street in Peoria. We have a model here. We have a model. It may not be the same model for all neighborhoods, but it's long overdue. I would just like to say the issue of empowerment, partnership, decision-making are all important, as you can witness. I'm not going to be long. And I think it's been said that they have challenges. And one of the greatest ones was probably just occurred last month. I would like to know how that turned out, how it was addressed, and how do we go forward. I think there's lessons to be learned, but I try to stay on top of these things, but I have not heard an explanation and like a closure to this, because we love our children. I've fought grown men who tried to fight their own kids on a football field. We must protect our children, and I think it's clear. I know these folks here, and I know they understand what I'm saying. There's lessons to be learned. We want to ensure that what the Greenwood Leadership Academy is saying, to safeguard and never let that happen again. But we need to know, the public needs to know. I have individuals who call me and say they don't even know what school, they just didn't like the act. I love all children. I mentor from one side of town to the other. This is my child. This is our child. These are our children. I think that explanation needs to be made public, and I think it would elevate this whole thing to another level, because if not, the public has that perception in their minds. So I don't know where the so-called investigations of who's all involved, but we need to know what happened and what is the resolution. But we haven't heard. But there's a model. There's a model.
Reverend Ray Owens.
Good evening, Dr. Gist, and to the members of this board and to your staff. It's my great privilege. My name is Ray Owens, and I serve as the chair of the board for the Metcares Foundation, and we oversee the Greenwood Leadership Academy. It was actually tomorrow will mark 4 years since we had that initial town hall meeting. We had 125 African-American leaders from all over Tulsa come together to talk about educational outcomes for kids in North Tulsa. We left that meeting and a subsequent meeting absolutely convinced. We really believed that a community-led effort could positively impact student outcomes, and from there we set out to do this work. I was asked recently, so what makes Greenwood Leadership Academy different and what are you most proud of? And I thought for a moment and I answered in this way. I'm most proud of the fact that Greenwood Leadership Academy students and families feel like GLA is a place where they belong, where the cultural practices and patterns and people mirror the kind of experiences and practices that many of our students and family find familiar. And if you have ever been in a place where you felt like you did not belong, and especially if that place was somewhere that you had to be for several hours, then you understand the value of being in a place where you feel like, I belong here. It feels good here. I think that's one of the great things that we have been able to accomplish, and we're looking forward to working with the district in this partnership to build on that particular culture that we have created. Now, I think I am obligated at this point to respond to our friend and fellow community member, Brother Darrell, who said, talk about the elephant in the room with Greenwood Leadership Academy and the accusation of misconduct on the part of one of our staff members. The actions that were described there do not align with the mission, the vision of GLA. As soon as we learned of this incident with a student in a locker, we immediately acted, and we acted decisively. That person is no longer employed by GLA as of, I think it's May the 22nd. But then we also went further than that. We saw this as a learning opportunity, an opportunity to actually create an even better environment for our kids. So some things that we have done. We have a plan to remove all lockers in the hallways at Greenwood Leadership Academy. We plan to reestablish policies and procedures of common areas, arrival, dismissal, restrooms, and training, additional training for our staff. We plan to establish a structure for intentional hallway monitoring, the duty posts, workspaces, and common areas. And we assure you that we are working with our staff to make sure that everybody adheres to a social emotional learning curriculum. We want to build on our progress, but we also want to seriously address the challenges. We left June 19th, 2014, believing that we could make a difference. I still believe. I still believe that a community-led effort can lead to positive changes in student outcomes for students in North Tulsa. I still believe in those talented, skilled faculty, staff, administrators, many of whom you've heard from tonight. I still believe in our parents. and their commitment to working and partnering with us to make GLA an exceptional learning experience. I still believe in the spirit of partnership that we talked about a year ago. And I appeal to each and every one of you to work with us to build that partnership so that we can create the model that others can learn from. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
That concludes the citizens' comments. Dr. Guest.
Thank you, Madam President. So at this point, I'm going to ask our Chief Design and Innovation Officer, Andrea Castaneda, to provide the board and others with additional information regarding this item before we move forward.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you for your time and also your concentration here at 9:35. I do want to kind of pull together some of the things you've already heard, but I'll start with the moment when you heard from our speakers when they asked you, the board, to be on board. And my role as staff to you, the authorizer, is to provide you guys with a clear and balanced view of what this first year has looked like for a school that was born out of an idea and just finished year one. But first, I'm going to just hit a few quick points on partnership to make sure that we're all thinking about this in a similar way, and then jump into performance. So Greenwood Leadership Academy is Oklahoma's first partnership school. That makes all of us trailblazers in a certain sense. And a few things about them. So they have an independent board. They hire their own staff. They have a lot of the autonomies that a charter school has, but their students are drawn from a geographic neighborhood area, and there is no lottery. So it's a neighborhood school of right. Their students are in our counts, so when we count our enrollment up, Greenwood students are in there, and their results all accrue to our district. So I think of this particular version of partnership as kind of a mashup of the best of charter and traditional neighborhood public schools all in one. I also want to just quickly remind you of the way that this is different than chartering. Partnership schools are renewed annually. This is not ideal, but it is a legal necessity. With the charter school, you guys remember, you renew them every 5 years. That gives schools time to demonstrate their performance over a period, not on a single year at a time. Having said that, we want to make sure that we give you as much information as we can to make an informed decision. And so I'm going to talk to you very briefly about some academic results, about some enrollment results, about attendance. But before I do that, I also want to loop back and respectfully summarize some of the germane aspects of the incident that happened in mid-May at Greenwood. We, as a school district, received notification of this handling of a student behavioral issue and improper use of discipline. We acted immediately in partnership with Greenwood. Together, within hours, urgent action was taken. We also immediately initiated an investigation that involved campus police and Tulsa police. And at the conclusion of that, no evidence of systematic fault was found. In short, after hours of review of information and interviews, it seems that this was a single incident, and the Greenwood Leadership Academy has dealt with it as a personnel matter. But it was still a serious incident, and so the conduct on everybody's part to respond to it was commensurate. It was urgent, and it was decisive. Just because something is not systematic doesn't mean it wasn't important, and every single person that I interacted with in that period treated it as a very important matter. Okay, so having kind of summarized what happened there, I do want to transition over and tell you guys a little bit about the first year of performance. I would characterize the first year of opening a school as very difficult. Really, really important to execute well and very hard to do well. And Greenwood had what I would also describe as common for many first years, some ups and some downs. In general, I would say their performance has peaks, it has valleys, and it could be characterized as uneven. Academically, their performance was strong in many ways. MAP growth was largely, as you heard from public speakers, solid for a first year. And in particular, MAP math growth was more than solid. It was very strong. To achieve strong growth in the first year means a lot was going right in classrooms. Attendance at the school was strong, exceeded the averages that we see for demographically similar schools. And again, here, it's hard to get attendance right, and they were getting something right in this school that caused students to come on a sustained basis at rates that are higher than we would normally expect. Greenwood struggled with discipline. And you've already heard them mention this. Their suspension rates were high. And they have already submitted to us as the authorizer a plan for how they're going to deal with this. I've met with multiple members of their staff and their board, and this is a serious issue for them, as it should be for you. They did a very good job at recruiting, and they did bring neighborhood kids back. Students who otherwise appear to have been opting out of our district. And they also did an excellent job filling seats. So all of these can be seen as a collection of evidence about the ways in which the school was strong, but also the ways in which they need to continue to really strive for the excellence that you heard them aspire to tonight. On a whole, I have had many encounters with all members of their faculty, of their leadership, and of their board. And I come to you in full confidence that they have the conviction to come through on the improvements that they have committed to you tonight. And they have the perseverance and stamina to maintain the areas in which they're strong. But you, as authorizers, are responsible for a trust but verify approach to outcomes. And so for this next year, we have put together an addendum to their contract to specify some very specific benchmarks. In other words, your expectations of them. These are expectations that are attainable, but they are rigorous, and they put them on the trajectory to meet the kinds of commitments that they made in their application and they made to you tonight. I'm going to pause there and field any questions you have.
Dr. Decker.
Thank you, President Schreiber. Ms. Chief Castaneda, thank you for the discussion. I wanted to talk a little bit about student behavior. Many times, students who lack the behaviors we're really aiming to receive have a disability or needs special services. So I just wanted to ask a little bit more about special education within Greenwood Leadership Academy and who's providing those services, how are kids being identified, and how are teachers being supported in serving those children.
Mm-hmm. So in the very beginning of what I was saying, I was describing us as all trailblazers a bit. And as trailblazers, you learn as you go. In this particular capacity, I think this is an important area where we, Tulsa Public Schools, have learned a lot about the partnership model as it exists with Greenwood. Greenwood uses Tulsa Public School staff for special education services. This requires a pretty close communication channel, and it also requires everyone to understand the relationship that they're in and be prepared to actively and continuously share information about student progress. This is a place where I think we have work to do. And Greenwood saw this happen during the year as they worked with students with disabilities, and they relied on staff that were not their own. And For the course of next year, what we have talked about is finding ways to ensure that special education teachers who are serving Greenwood students have the opportunity to engage in more of the Greenwood side of the academic house's overall approach to school. So be involved in the students' day-to-day work, be involved in the adult life of Greenwood academic culture, and generally strengthen the communication connection between them and the district.
Ms. Marshall.
Do we have someone trained at Academy Central in special education, someone with any type of certification in special education that's there at the Academy Central location on a day-to-day basis?
We have 2 special education teachers that work at the Academy Central location, which is also the facility's home for Greenwood. Of those 2 teachers, last year, a portion of one, a proper proportion of one based on population, was assigned to Greenwood. Next year, one of the 2 will be working exclusively with Greenwood. In short, yes, certified special education educators are working with students who need their support.
Was Greenwood taking advantage of the fact that they were in the same building, and were they actively pursuing a relationship?
Yeah. Everyone was actively pursuing the relationship, but I think this is a place that Tulsa Public Schools, and perhaps the charter office in particular, bears unique responsibility. We need to make sure that that relationship works. We need to make sure that everybody who's party to it understands how they're party to it. This is a complication and a unique opportunity within the partnership model, and one that we unearthed over the course of the year and are correcting for next year.
Well, I'm not trying to point the finger or say who's to blame of this. What I'm about is the fact that we now have a child in trauma. And if we had someone in close proximity, whether we had someone going there to that building on a regular basis, if there was someone in close proximity, like in the same building, that could have gone over, or they could have approached when they had a problem in working with this child, it should have been done, because now we have a child in trauma, and I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen if the school is renewed and they have another problem like this. Are they going to feel free to go and reach out to teachers or specialized teachers in that same building to develop those working relationships when they don't have people coming from the service center or other areas? Because this can't happen again.
First of all, I will be a keen observer of the obvious. This cannot happen again. This cannot happen again. No version of this can happen again. And the answer is yes. They're going to have access to a full-time special education teacher who works with Greenwood students and is part of the broader culture of the building. And so to answer the question, will they have ready access? Yes. To answer the question, will there be communication? Yes. To answer the question, is there an appropriate adjudication of blame? At this point, it's a going forward prospect of improvement, and I think we all have dramatically owned the degree to which we share in that enterprise, because it is a partnership school. It is a partnership model, and that makes it a partnership in the highs and the lows.
Thank you.
Ms. Shelton.
Could you speak more to the addendum to the contract and specific metrics that we're looking at? Is it particularly suspensions? And then is it communicated in that addendum that these are benchmarks that need to be met for a renewal for a 3rd year?
Yeah, so the addendum does lay out benchmarks in 3 areas, and there are 5 kind of subsets within that. Benchmarks for math and reading math growth. Benchmarks for attendance, and it's separated into pre-K and kindergarten, 1st and 2nd. Those are separated because there are actually some unique dimensions of attendance for the two different grade spans. And specifically relative to suspension, What it calls for is a dramatic reduction in suspensions, both unique and total. It does not set forth a number in there, unlike in every other area, for one specific reason. We do not wish to signal that a number is acceptable. It does not suggest that a single low number is the right number. What it suggests is that Greenwood Leadership Academy, along with all of our neighborhood schools, have got an obligation to dramatically reduce suspensions, unique and total. The addendum also makes something that already existed in the contract doubly clear, which is that we will have both announced and unannounced site visits by qualified visit personnel, and that we'll be reporting back to the board on a regular basis. In short, these should be your expectations for the school for next year. They are just a clearer and brighter version, annualized, of what you expect for charter schools over a 5-year term. And it sets them on the trajectory to be reaching both those and also their own expectations.
Excuse me, Dr. Decker and then Ms. Marshall.
Thank you. Greenwood served 164 students this year, if I'm reading the table correctly. And I'm wondering if you know how many of these children are planning to return as students next year.
I don't know that answer exactly, but I think that I can offer you some other data that starts to get at the question I believe you're asking, which is about retention. Over the course of the year, between when they started and now, Greenwood has lost 19 students to a variety of factors. Over half of those 19 went to other district schools. The remainder exited for a variety of other reasons. They moved, they did different things. So that is a sense of what their retention has looked like, calculated not from a single point in time to next year, but over the entirety of the school year. During that time, they've also had net enrollment increase, which is to say, setting those 19 aside, they're still serving more kids at the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year, which paints a slightly different picture of retention, recruitment, and enrollment.
And Dr. Decker, the portfolio committee can get those specifics as they come in for when we know the enrollment numbers. Ms. Marshall.
Do you know if the teachers at Greenwood, or if they're aware or familiar with the positive behavior support plan?
I know that they work closely with our disciplinary procedures, and those are adopted as part of their school and board policy. I know that they orient everybody through a personal handbook that makes references to all of those things. That's as far into the window of staff orientation as I'm able to go.
Okay. Second question. Do you know why Greenwood leadership decided to release the pre-K children 2 weeks early?
Yeah, and first I'll say that Greenwood didn't actually release them 2 weeks early, but there was a moment of significant miscommunication within their faculty. The school did not release the students.
Who released them?
There was miscommunication within a smaller subset of teachers, and the school found out. They notified me immediately. The day that it happened, they notified me of it, and they also notified me of their plan to immediately correct it. The same day that the miscommunication happened, they reached out to parents and took very decisive action to correct that, to tell them that they needed to finish out the school year. And for students that didn't return, they made one-on-one calls and outreach. When pre-K ended the year at Greenwood, despite this miscommunication, their pre-K attendance was still, in general, higher than the demographically comparable schools. Yes, it happened, it did, and it shouldn't have.
Do we know why this miscommunication happened?
I just know that it was a miscommunication that was later corrected. But I think that it is a helpful representative example of how things go wrong, and in this case, Greenwood did immediately act. They did not try to hide it, and they did not try to hope that no one noticed. And so in that sense, I think that it's evidence of the ways in which correction can happen even in the midst of difficulty.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Ms. Marshall.
I have been agonizing over this situation and fielding calls and questions and dodging calls and questions and just deliberating in my own mind ever since this situation came to my attention. And I just feel it incumbent upon me that I need to make a statement. In light of the recent events at GLA, it's apparent to me as a Tulsa Public School Board member, Greenwood Leadership Academy has so much work to do to be ready to serve the children of this city as a partner with Tulsa Public Schools. When we reflect back upon the results of the panoramic survey of social emotional learning component, we can ask ourselves the question, do our children feel safe? And we're left with the answer, no. The recent events at GLA reveal the lack of safety for students and the blatant disregard for state and federal regulatory guidelines concerning special needs and our students with disabilities. While GLA made some reported gains in attendance and math, we cannot afford to turn our heads or close our eyes to the early dismissal of students, to the high suspension rates, and to this egregious, abusive event of placing a child in a locker as a form of discipline. I don't know of any credible educational system or a competent parent that would allow the creation or the implementation of a positive behavior support plan to reflect an action such as this, which would be a violation of law. It is for the following reasons I can't support at this time and any time that it comes before the board in the near future the renewal. Reason one, lack of administrative capacity to provide a safe educational environment for students. Reason two, administrative employees' lack of experience, training, and ability to satisfactorily implement the federal and state educational guidelines which provides for the fulfillment of educational constitutional guarantees for all citizens, all children. Number three, the school had demonstrated an inability to properly administrate pre-K through first grade. Renewal would add the additional responsibilities of a second grade class. Number four, the apparent absence of adequate and necessary support systems. Recently, a fast food restaurant. At this restaurant, a worker found a dead mouse in a bag of buns. The worker went to the leadership of his employment and asked, what must we do? What do we need to do? What can we do? Frantic because it was the peak time of service. The leadership said, just keep on serving, just keep on doing. Serve around the apparent mouse dropping, serve around the apparent dead mice that were laying around the restaurant. keep on serving. And what we have continued to do in this city, in this district, in the state of Oklahoma is to keep serving up education in the face of apparent educational inadequacies, in the face of problems, in the face of the lack of a regard for the law, in the face of the fact that we are in non-compliance. Everything that has been done, and it's not on Greenwood leadership in totality. It's on TPS as well, the non-compliance. And we can't continue to do this over and over because now we have a child in trauma. And this was not an isolated incident. Don't tell me that it was. We have a child in trauma, and children who are in trauma turn out to be children in penitentiaries, children who are caught up in the social service systems of this state, children that are caught up in the mental health systems. It's systemic. I don't care how we look at it. And we, as a board, it's incumbent upon us that we have to look at this more seriously than anybody else. And we can't allow any political parties, any political friends, any kinships, relationships, anything to sway the way that we vote on this and anything else. And I, for one, as a board member, I am sick and tired of what we do in this board room. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions on this item? So I want to thank the board members and members of our team and members of the community who engaged with this information item. I'll move on to item G14. This is an item that is routine in nature and recommends entering into a contract with JP Morgan Chase Bank to provide a procurement card program for the district. The district has successfully managed a procurement card program since 2002. This will be the fourth amendment to the original agreement. There's no cost for the cards, setup, reporting, or maintenance, and we're certainly available to answer any questions if there are any. Items G15 through G19 will be presented by the Executive Director of Bond Projects, Chris Hudgens. Mr. Hudgens.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, President Schreiber, and board members. Item G15 is to enter in contract with the lowest responsible bidder for roof repairs at 6 different sites. This is a standard project that is part of the 2015 bond issue, and it's under bidding phase right now. We'll be bringing that back in the July board meeting for approval. Item G16. This is a exciting time. We're going to approve the reciprocal contract for the sale and the city right interest in the Clinton track, and we are trading the Posey property for the Clinton tract of land. They're both approximately 10 acres, and this is going to allow the EduCare 4 facility to be built at Clinton Elementary. The Posey property is located at 1500 South 157th and is just a vacant 10 acres of land, and there's no cost to the district. Item G17 is to enter a contract to the lowest responsible bidder for drainage improvements at the TPS warehouse and as-needed paving for various projects throughout the district. It's all part of the 2015 bond issue. Items G18 is to approve supplements 9 and 10 with Allied Engineering for design services on various projects. Item G19 is a correction to amend E11. The vendor was incorrectly stated. None of the amounts have changed from the last time it was approved. Are there any questions?
No questions on that item. I do want to circle back to G13 and regarding GLA, and I will just say that what I heard tonight was a very open and transparent dialogue about what happened, everyone facing the failures, the challenges, and the successes, and trying to figure out how to make a model that is very, very important to TPS and the city of Tulsa go forward. And I look forward to continuing the conversation around that. I challenge the notion that this is an effort to continue to serve up the same thing. I think it's actually quite unique, and I look forward to, like I say, over the next 2 weeks, continuing the dialogue about this and the vote on it in 2 weeks. And with that, we can move on if there are no other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hudgens and Madam President, and that concludes the information portion of tonight's agenda.
So we'll move to staff reports. Dr. Gist?
We do have a staff report, but in the interest of the hour, and I know we have some members of our team who've been waiting a long time to share, and I know board members have been engaging for a long time, so we've decided to postpone that staff report tonight, Madam President.
Well, I don't know if Mr. Cloud is here, but I wish I would have made that decision earlier. Poor guy.
I agree with that, but
yes, I understand. Okay, so then we'll move on to board member reports and concerns. Any board member reports or concerns? Okay. And I just want to make a quick report. The Portfolio Committee did have a meeting before this meeting this evening, and that's the committee that thinks about partnership schools, charters, all of our different school models, and we did discuss GLA there, and with the support of Ms. Castaneda helping us figure out how to go forward and providing us with the notion of the addendum. So look forward to that. Citizen comments, we have a few this evening, and if you want to go ahead and line up at the podium, we have 3 individuals who will be speaking to the proposed contract with Dr. Kim Lewis that appeared as item G75 on the June 4th, 2018 information agenda, and we'll start with Ms. Cece Canfield.
Hello, my name is Cece Canfield. I retired from Tulsa Public after working 31 years with the district. I worked as a speech pathologist in various schools and a coordinator lead for speech pathologists for over 10 of those 31 years. Janice Graham, lead school psychologist, and I led the related service groups, not with threats, mean-spirited statements, vulgar language, or profanities towards the group, but the core values the district made public as important: team, character, joy, equity, and excellence. We were both fully staffed and able to serve the district students with the highest quality of services. The request tonight is that you vote not to renew Dr. Kim Lewis's contract. If you feel it's necessary to hire a consultant, hire one that knows how to lead and demonstrate the skills necessary to unify the departments and reignite the high level of service to our students that TPS is used to receiving. Dr. Lewis's leadership is typified by bullying, mean-spirited threats, sarcasm, profanity, and divisive tactics. What is her history of successful consultation contracts without early termination? And if terminated early, why was that? Was the TPS Special Ed Department set up for failure at a cost of nearly $400,000 so as to allow her to continue to renew costly contracts? If you vote yes to renewing this contract for $185,000, you will also be spending at least another $500,000 to $800,000 for outsourcing speech therapy and recouping maybe $100,000 in Medicaid money. This results in a net loss of $215,000 to $515,000 and possibly higher. This situation was allowed to occur while Dr. Lewis was helping the Special Ed Department with its leadership roles. Why is it not possible for existing Special Ed administration and new leads to help the related service persons develop metrics and lead them without the threats, without the demeaning statements about their work ethics and the rude, sarcastic statements? If you asked for a vote of confidence in her skills, you would receive a resounding no vote of confidence by anyone who has worked with her the last 2.5 years. Instead, vote of confidence vote for the related service people that have dedicated years and years of service to the district and allow them to develop metrics under the guidance of existing ESC staff and the new leads that demonstrate positive character, joy, and the true meaning of team. I would like to address the 3 areas of concern that are directly opposite of the 3 of the 5 core values set forth by this board: character, team, and joy. Why does the district profess that these core values are important and yet continue to support someone that does not exhibit them? Under team, the leadership style exhibited by Dr. Lewis is hostile and divisive. Teams are pitted against each other and are under constant threat. The leadership under Dr. Lewis's direction has created an environment that is no longer desirable for related service people to continue their contract and have left not for more money, but for work environments that are pleasant or that have student needs as the main concern, and not billing Medicaid to fulfill a $1 million promise. Character. The character values demonstrated by Dr. Lewis include sarcasm, bullying tactics, profanity, foul language, and rude behavior. Dr. Lewis has made a promise to the district that with her guidance, the district could recoup $1 million. This promise is unrealistic and is pushing groups to bill for services when they are understaffed and unable to serve the students adequately. This promise is also based on the Maryland Medicaid rules and not the Oklahoma Medicaid rules. She has successfully zapped the joy from related service providers by forcing them to continue to attempt to bill with very limited results. At the zenith of billing Medicaid approximately 8 to 10 years ago, we brought in $400,000. This year alone, I figure that over 5,000 man-hours have been spent to recoup approximately $50,000 to $60,000, roughly one person's contract. I would have to say that's not worth the time being taken away from serving and working with students. In the past 2.5 years, Dr. Lewis has promised hiring people that are not ready to lead the second largest special ed district in the state. But with these recommendations, she has successfully set up the continued need to have her on a contract renewal. The director for related services last year opened the first day of school with, "Nobody will get higher than a 3 on a TLE, and you're just going to be real lucky if you don't get a PDP." Let's say no to continually renewing her contract and creating a bigger and bigger loss of valuable personnel to other districts.
Ms. Linda Geyer.
Hi, I'm Janice Graham, and I retired a year ago from Tulsa Public Schools, and the last place I want to be on a Monday night in June is speaking at a board meeting. But for the people that you just heard from right there, we've come out of our retirement to come and address you for them. They've tried to speak for themselves through TCTA, through talking to direct supervisors. To let you know who I am, in my 33-year career in Tulsa Public Schools, I was a school psychologist for 22 of the years. For 7 of those years, I was the lead. As the lead, we built such a strong school psych staff that we were able to recruit psychologists from outlying districts such as Broken Arrow, Skytook, Union, Bixby. Our group was highly respected in the state of Oklahoma for the way in which we identified disabilities in children who were bilingual, as well as our ability to identify children with autism on the spectrum and how to address those needs. Because of that, people came and became school psychologists with this group. I'm the person that actually interviewed those people and asked them to come. And since Dr. Lewis has come to our district and provided services, we're seeing people leave. What I will tell you, I do not want you to renew her contract. I'll tell you my story. I personally have observed her to be a bully. She uses profanity, targets individuals with differences of opinion. She's created a toxic work environment in the special education department. In collaborative groups, she would often spout out, "That's why I get paid the big bucks," when she would insist that her opinion was the most valid. She has created an environment of fear and retaliation. Due to this treatment, TPS no longer has fully related service staff providers, such as a school psychologist and speech-language pathologist that sit behind me. As a matter of fact, you lost a school psychologist today. They're very hard to find. These are people that have master's plus degrees. They have licensures and certification that are very difficult to find, and they're some of the most highly qualified people you will ever find in Tulsa Public Schools. Unfortunately, I was one of those people that was targeted. And this is the part that really saddens me, because I had both formal and informal conversations with my direct supervisor, Greg James. Some were more formal because I was being given PDPs, job targets, whatever you want to call them. This was done in the presence of Patty Ferguson, who was there to represent me as TCTA representative, Kim Hendricks, who is my OEA representative, Bill Napsker observed them. I reached out to Dr. Pauline Harris, who's the Human Rights Director for the district, and nothing happened for me. I needed to leave. It was my time. I retired, and I'm doing great. But when there's an injustice like this going on, I feel like I need to step up. I've gone. I'm certified as a psychologist and a teacher, a special ed teacher. They're really hard to find. Now I'm a realtor. I've been flipping houses because of the teacher walkout. I'm now a candidate for the House of Representatives. So I love what you were talking about. So what I want to say to the board is I'm stepping up, hopefully to go to the Capitol, to do what needs to be done for education in the funding realm and with teacher pay. But what I ask of you is to listen to your employees. There is a vote of no confidence put together by all the related service providers. You know, why didn't people listen to me here? Why aren't people listening to Patty Ferguson? But I think you're hearing that we are saying that this is going to be very detrimental if you renew Dr. Lewis's contract.
Ms. Linda Geyer.
Hello. First of all, I want to say thank you for pushing the pause button on renewing this contract, removing it from the approval agenda. You listened, and we all appreciate that. I am Linda Geyer. I retired last year as well. I was a coordinator in the Office of Student and Family Support Services. In my 8 years with the district, I served as the PBIS coordinator, that stands for Positive Behavior, Interventions, and Supports, and eventually worked with Kathy Siebold and the Boston Consulting Group to detail a plan to assist schools in creating tiered student support systems and a data system that would measure and identify needs and progress in 5 areas: behavior, academics, social emotional development, health and wellness, and family and community involvement. Having more than 10 years experience in leading schools and districts in the implementation of tiered support systems, I knew this was important, cutting-edge work that would put Tulsa Public Schools on the map nationally. Unfortunately, I was a person who voiced opinions and ideas that did not fully align with those of Kim Lewis, which would ultimately bring my career with TPS to an abrupt end. When she was first hired as a consultant for TPS, she worked solely with the Office of Exceptional Student Support. Our paths crossed at various meetings, and I respectfully disagreed with her on a couple of important issues. In the spring of 2017, the announcement was made that Kim Lewis would be involved in my department as well. Her first task was to give each person on the team 15 minutes of her time to discuss our work. She boasted that she would be able to determine each person's skill and will based on that brief conversation. Imagine 42 years of experience in the field of behavior at classroom, district, and state levels, and I was to be evaluated, in a sense, by someone who I had disagreed with and who was willing to give me only 15 minutes of her time. Her reputation preceded her. By this time, everyone knew how she felt about and dealt with people who disagreed with her. When I showed her the work that Kathy Siebold and I had developed, she refused to look at it and literally tossed that work across the table without question or any sort of discussion to understand the work to which I devoted myself, nights and weekends included. I received my pink slip and was told I could interview for any position. The position I was best suited for was the newly created MTSS, Multi-Tiered Systems of Support Coordinator position. But Kim was sitting in on those interviews. I knew from her attitude and actions during our meeting it would have been pointless. When I left, I was replaced by 4 people. Yes, 4 people. 2 people who are not familiar with tiered support systems are now in charge of learning about MTSS and rolling it out. Let me emphasize, I was super qualified and I had a cutting-edge plan in hand. Yet I was pushed out and replaced by 4 people who knew nothing about the roles they were assigned, and this was all based on Kim Lewis's recommendations and actions. I have moved on, and I'm very happy to be an independent consultant and behavior support specialist. However, I share my story to give insight on what Kim Lewis is like in the workplace and how her actions have thrown district efforts into chaos and set progress back significantly. Believe me, there are others with similar stories, and the stories are continuing today because her caustic approach remains the same. In the Tulsa world, she is quoted as saying she has learned a lot and that she'll take the feedback to heart. But I have 2 responses. First of all, she's already been paid $309,000, and this is a $185,000 contract that's being offered. These are not beginning salaries. For that amount of money, we have the right to expect a professional who doesn't need to learn lessons in common human decency and respect for others. Second, as Maya Angelou once said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. It's time to say enough. She's paid with donor fees, but that's no excuse for keeping her on contract. And if there's a philanthropist in listening in any way, shape, or form, I want to say thank you for all you do to support Tulsa schools.
Ms. Geyer, your time's up. I want to thank all of you for sharing your thoughts this evening and for your patience and staying till the end of the meeting and being here to comment.
Thank you, Madam President. I do have some brief remarks before we wrap up, just because it's very time sensitive. We are working really hard right now on the start of schools. We have a cross-departmental team. We had a kickoff on June 7th, and our start of schools team includes 41 district team members representing 22 departments. This includes facilities, operations, teaching and learning, transportation, bond, finance, and instructional leadership. The team is focused on school service, and we're going to work with our school leaders to ensure that every single school and classroom is in great repair. They're well supplied. They are what we call Tulsa clean and ready to welcome our teachers and students back in August. Something that's new this year at the start of schools is the task tracker. It's designed for school leaders to ensure that we're meeting the needs and expectations of every school community over the summer months. And we've heard from our school leaders that we need to continue working to improve our internal communications. So we've put this tool in place to allow for real-time feedback and provide a one-stop channel for school leaders to request supports and services specifically for their start of school. And we'll keep sharing updates with the board and the public as we move along through the summer. Another really critical piece of the start of schools efforts is our work to continue to improve security of our school buildings. There's nothing more important than keeping our students and teachers safe, and we are caring for people's loved ones, their precious babies, and that is an enormous responsibility of ours. We take it very seriously and urgently, and I wanted to share some updates. Some of you are aware that we have been creating what we call sort of an uber secure entrance. These have happened so far at Celia Clinton, Eisenhower International, Elliott, Kendall Whittier, Lindbergh, Mitchell, Springdale, Zero, and Hale Junior High, and we're putting them in 14 additional schools over the summer. We expect to have these installed in every single school by the end of 2019. Now, to be clear, all of our schools currently have entries where visitors need to be buzzed into the building. But these new entrances add a second layer of safety by creating a locked vestibule and routing visitors through the office before they're admitted into the main part of the school. And we've prioritized the sites based on need and also the expediency of getting them installed. Our campus police team is also working diligently to ensure that we stay aligned with national best practices and protocols in school safety. So we've established a close partnership and social media threat management process in partnership with the Tulsa Police Department and the FBI. This has helped us to identify and manage a number of ultimately unfounded threats toward our schools. I cannot stress enough and again how seriously we take these threats. And even if a student intends for their social media post to be in jest, we consider it to be real and credible until we can determine otherwise. This means that the students behind such posts face very real consequences, up and including to long-term suspensions and even criminal charges. Also last week, Chief Wicks convened the first meeting of local law enforcement and campus safety officials. This group includes representatives from surrounding school districts, along with the Tulsa Police Department and the FBI. We will meet bi-monthly throughout the coming year to collaborate, to discuss and analyze trends and security issues that could impact our school communities. And then lastly, we cannot kick off a great school year without hiring, and we can't kick off a great school year without a teacher in every classroom. And our talent management team has been working tirelessly to recruit exceptional educators to join Team Tulsa. So we have seen a total of 389 exits due to resignations or retirements, but I will add that this is far below where we've been in the past. We began our recruitment efforts in January, and we've been hiring throughout the winter, and so we currently, even with those exits, only have about 132 vacancies. Our team has held 19 hiring events since January with an average of 39 attendees at each. We're incredibly grateful to our local media outlets for helping us spread the word about these events: Tulsa World, Fox 23, KJRH, KTUL, and News on 6. And our next hiring event is coming up this Thursday, the 21st, from 8:30 to 4:30 right here in this very room. So more to come. Wanted to share those updates, and that concludes my remarks this evening, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Gist. We have no non-routine items to discuss this evening. Any new business, Mr. Wade? No new business. Bring us to the announcement. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Monday, July 2nd, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. in the Cheryl Selman Room at the Education Service Center, 3027 South New Haven Avenue, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I'll call for the vote. Ms. Fate?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
I'm disappointed.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
We're going to stop doing this. It's like the third or fourth one we've had.
With that much time. I know it.